Budget workshop is called to order at 1:01. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges?
Here.
Commissioner Oakley?
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat?
Here.
Vice Mayor Weinstein? Here. Mayor Black?
Present. The floor is now open for public comment. And the floor is now closed for public comment. First item for discussion is the group health insurance rates and renewals.
Madam Mayor, if I may introduce the item and then have our finance director introduce the speakers. As we went through the fiscal year 2019 budget process, one of the things that we've heard from the board is to look at the composition of our benefit structure and if there's some opportunities for some savings for the organization. So in conversations internally with staff, we reached out to our existing service provider, communicated our thoughts and perspectives on some changes and modifications that we wanted to look at to effectively render savings for the organization, to be able to utilize some of that money to offset some of the benefits that are currently offered to the employees and to assist in funding the compensation increase that we're proposing. Furthermore, staff also solicited input and feedback from another broker, the Benecon Group, to look at another insurance provider and to see if there's opportunities for savings. So effectively, we didn't go through a full solicitation, but we did go out and see what the market bears as it relates to insurance. And lo and behold, the insurance provider that we have made some substantial modifications and some changes that we believe that we're still going to offer a robust plan to the employees while rendering some real savings for the organization and really controlling our health care costs as we move forward. Some of the proposals that you would see will really allow for the employee to be a consumer and be mindful of the expenses. The previous plan that we had in place was, in essence, a Cadillac plan. It provides for a lot of benefits, but you'll see the data that we have when you look at it over a trend, over a 3-year period, shows that our employees effectively were not utilizing or coming close to what those caps were. So we were paying for an insurance plan that wasn't being utilized to its fullest capacities and fullest extent. So we believe that with the additional plan structures that we're proposing in front of you this afternoon, it provides that reassurance for the employees. It also makes them a consumer of their health services and being mindful of what those costs are, as well as returning some savings to offset some of the things that we'll talk about later on today. So kudos to the HR staff, the finance staff, and everyone working together to really get into the conversation about how can we return some savings to the organization and address some of the health care cost and the increases that we're starting to see across the market. This last proposal, the original proposal that we received for health insurance, provided for a 10% increase. And what you would look at today, it actually is a decrease in the cost of health insurance that we paid in previous fiscal years. So the proposal that you will see will actually provide a great level of coverage at a lesser cost and allow for more folks to, in essence, have skin in the game, to be making good informed health decisions. And you're not going to see a diminishment of any of the plans to the point where you're going to hear from employees some concerns. And we have a program in here that really addresses a way to provide some seed money to help offset some of the plan design changes. So we're really happy about where we find ourselves today, and I think the board will see the work that went into this, working with our vendor and bringing you something that effectively accomplishes some of the comments and some of the policy direction that this board has given us looking at our health insurance. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the finance director to introduce the team that will be addressing this topic today.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, and I'd just like to echo what the City Manager said. We've really learned a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I didn't have the time, but I did go down to Naples to meet at the PRM conference, and I'm glad I did, because when we found out initially some bad news, Patrick, Katie, and I went up to Paul, and we started almost crying, and Paul guided us to Bridget here, And we looked at some different options, and we came away with a better understanding and some good options, and hopefully you'll like what you hear today. So Bridget Gash, she is the account management specialist with Florida Blue and representative, and Paul Hubert, the vice president of client services and compliance at Gallagher Benefits. And so I'll turn it over to Bridget, and she can introduce some of the other members of your team too.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have Paul Hebert here with Gallagher Benefits, Katrina Boutot, the Assistant Executive Director with PRM, and Bonnie Mims, the Executive Director with PRM, are also in attendance, just in case you have any questions that are specific to PRM as a whole and how it functions. We'll start off with Paul. He's going to do an overview of PRM and the current benefits package. I'm going to step in and talk to you about the plan options that we discussed a couple weeks ago and some options for your employees, and then we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Bridget, and good afternoon. Just to give you a little bit of a history on public risk management.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Can you use the mic or get closer to that mic? There's a handheld one if it's easier.
I'll suck in my belly so I can get closer. So I'm Paul Hebert. I'm with Gallagher Benefit Services, and I am the broker for Public Risk Management of Florida Health Trust. And public risk management is basically it's a interlocal. It's a trust formed by an interlocal government agreement. So you, as a member, joining with 50 some odd other governmental entities, have signed bylaws so that you are a participating board member on a health trust, where you offer medical insurance through a self-funded health insurance program in conjunction with other Florida governmental entities. Now, PRM is structured in a way that it is an interlocal government agreement, so it is member-run. So the City of Madeira Beach has a board member that is nominated to the board and is a voting member. PRM, the health trust, is the only consortium in the state that is member-run. So every member has a vote on the health trust board. Public risk management was formed back in 1987. It has a property and casualty trust, which is separate and apart from what we're talking about today, which is the health trust, which was formed about a year and a half later in the late 1980s. The City of Madeira Beach joined the PRM Health Trust in October of 2009. So you've been a member of the health trust going on 9 years now. And again, just to reiterate, it is a member-run pool, so you all serve on the board of directors, and you have a vote on the pool with regard to the direction of the health trust. Go one more slide, Bridget. So as I mentioned, the PRM Health Trust, it's a self-insured program. That means that the funding that we collect in premiums is used to actually pay both the claims incurred. So we're responsible for setting premiums, and the dollars that we collect are used to pay the claims incurred by the members, so the city and all of its employees, and all of the other employers that participate in their employees, and then also fixed expenses. So in order to run this program, we have certain fixed expenses that we need to pay to make sure that we can operate the health trust in a manner that would be satisfactory to you all as members. So for example, we have Florida Blue as our claims administrator. They provide administrative services, so we use the Florida Blue network, we use Florida Blue's processes and procedures to adjudicate claims and to satisfy appeals and that type of thing. And we utilize their cost containment programs. We also have something called reinsurance or stop-loss insurance. Because we're self-funded, that means we are responsible for paying every dollar in claims out of our own assets. It's not a fully insured arrangement where the insurer has a liability. We as the health trust own that liability. So to protect the financial viability of the health trust, we purchase something called reinsurance. And what reinsurance does, it provides a backstop against high-cost claimants. So we have a carrier, Voya, that was formerly ING, that is our reinsurer. So they provide that stop-loss insurance against high claimants. We also have a consortium fee because we have administrative functions that are performed by public risk management. And then we also have a benefits administration system that we utilize. So all of our members, we track all of the premium payments and the enrollments and the disenrollments through a system. So all those things make up the fixed costs that go into the health trust. So claims plus fixed costs is the total, what we are trying to pay for when we set premium rates. We have a graph in the presentation that shows how the dollars that are collected are allocated. And you'll see that 89% of the premium dollars collected from each of the participating members goes to pay actual claims expenses, which means 11% is used to pay the fixed costs, and then if there's anything additional, it stays in surplus so that we have a cushion. The state of Florida actually requires us to maintain 2 months' worth of claims as reserves in the event that we have, potential issues, because the state wants to make sure that self-funded programs have sufficient assets to cover liabilities. So when we set our premium rates, we're making sure that we're covering the 89% to pay towards claims, the 11% to pay towards fixed costs, and make sure we have that state mandatory minimum. When we set rates, so Gallagher is the broker of record, and we have actuaries on staff that work with PRM directly, and we set the premium rates for each member group. And it's a kind of a 3-year process, but you've been in a long time. But so basically in year 1, we look at you like any insurance carrier would look at you. We get your census information, we get your past claims history, we get your exposure for large high-cost claimants, we get your demographics, and we underwrite you and we decide what do we think it's going to cost us in claims and expenses to have you in the pool, and we set premium rates accordingly. So in year 1, we would set premium rates just like any insurance carrier would. In year 2, and actually every year what we do is we come up with a pool average. So we figure out the pool as a whole, and we figure out how much of a increase do we need based on claims collected today, healthcare increases, healthcare trend, and projections. What increase would be needed for the pool on average in the subsequent year to meet all of our liabilities? So in year 2, as a second-year member, you would receive whatever the pool average is. Years 3 and beyond, what we do is we start with the pool average, and we use that as the starting point, and we look at your actual claims experience during the year, and we give you credit for your claims experience, and we either adjust the pool average up or down by a maximum of 6% in either direction in increments of 2%. So in a really good claim year, you could be 6% below the pool average, and in a really bad claim year, you could be maximum 6% above the pool average. So the swing on the renewal increases for the membership as a whole is a 12% swing. And again, with that pool average that we come to as the middle point. This past year, our pool average was 8%, which is just at or slightly below what current medical trend is. So if you were talking to professionals out in the field and said, what are we anticipating medical costs to increase next year? They would say just regular healthcare spend is going to go up anywhere between 8 to 10% next year. So our pool average going into next year is 8%, and that was the median point where we started. And then we looked at your actual claims history over the past year to determine, how many dollars did we spend versus how many dollars we collected in premium for you, and we applied an adjustment factor based on that 8%. So I've included a renewal history for the city, and you'll see for 2018-19, we came in with a renewal of 10%, which was 2 points above the pool average. Your loss ratio was 109.5%. So what that means is for every dollar that the city paid into PRM and premium over the year, PRM paid out $1.09 on every dollar that you paid in claims and fixed expenses. Now, in the fully insured marketplace, how would that translate? So the insurance carrier would say, okay, we paid out more than we collected. So one, we need to kind of recoup for that 9.5% that we didn't get, that we overpaid. Two, we need to account for medical trend in the next year, and I already said that's somewhere between 8 and 10%, so 9.5 plus another 8%, and then they want to build in a margin for a little bit of profit, because insurance carriers don't work for free. So, if you were in the fully insured marketplace, based on your claims history from this past year, you would have gotten some type of renewal increase, probably in the 20% plus range, based on your claims history in this past year. And I didn't say it earlier, and I probably should have. Since PRM is a self-funded pool, we have no profit margin built in. Our goal really is to figure out what we think it's going to cost to run the pool for the upcoming plan year, and we set all the premium rates to hit that right on the bullseye, because we have no incentive or no need to try to capture more money. So we've eliminated, when you self-fund, we've eliminated that incentive to build in a profit margin. So there's really no profit built in. If you look at the renewal history I provided, in the first column I have the loss ratios from each year. And again, those are the dollars paid out in claims and expenses compared to what's paid in. So there's been quite a bunch of years where it's been over 100%. When you look at the PRM renewal, that's the renewal that we gave to the city of Madeira Beach based on where the pool performed as a whole on our pool average, with the deviation schedule applied based on your claims experience. So historically, so this year you had a 10% increase, but in 2017, 16, 15, you had single-digit increases. 2014 and 15, you had a great claims year and you had a flat renewal. 13 and 12, you had mid-9 renewals. And then 2010, 2011, you had a couple rough years when you first came in, but your renewals were in the low double digits, 11% and 13.5%. So as a whole, when you look at where your loss ratios are and where the renewals came in, you're actually a great example of how folks in the pool really benefit from the structure we have and the way we have the limitations on the renewal tied to the pool average with a maximum of 6% above the pool average. Because in years that are bad, you're benefiting from the fact that other groups in the pool performed well, and you're getting advantage from the fact that the pool average was lower, and it really pulled where your renewal might have been independently. So a great example of an advantage of being in the pool. So I'm going to turn it over to Bridget right now to talk about the 3 plans that you're currently in today and then some potential options.
Let me ask you a question first.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got it right. You were talking at the beginning, like if someone comes in with a high claim for something, how do you handle that, did you say? You turned it over to somebody else?
So, right. So the pool, we engage a reinsurer. So what we do is there's something called a specific deductible. So if any entity, so say the city of Madeira Beach has a claimant that has claims in excess of $300,000. The health trust, the pool, is reimbursed by the reinsurer for any dollars that are paid out in claims over the $300,000. And then you, as the city, when we look at your claims experience, we disregard any claims above $300,000. So if you had a transplant on your staff, or if you had a hemophiliac, which cost millions of dollars, those are a couple scary health conditions that really have a negative impact on claims experience. If you had either of those, any claims that were incurred by your staff, your employees, or their dependents above $300,000 kind of come off the plate with regard to you and the calculation of how we look at your renewal. The health trust gets we're paying those claims dollars anyway, but we get reimbursed by the reinsurer. So we're protecting the long-term viability of the pool against these large claimants. You're not adversely affected by the large claimant when we're looking at your specific loss ratios, because that comes off of the calculation because it's reimbursed through another insurance carrier.
Catastrophic events.
It's for catastrophic. It's $300,000 plus
Yeah.
we get reimbursements for.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Paul. I just want to step in here and talk a little bit about the actual plans that are currently offered by the city, and then also some options that we've discussed in the past few weeks that may be beneficial for the employees. So this first page here is just a snapshot. It's the plans that are currently offered. So you have the 3748 plan, which is currently the employer or the employee paid plan at 100%. The blue option 03359 and the blue option 05901. I'm actually going to go into further detail on these benefits on another slide, so I'll go ahead and move to the next slide here. What we wanted to do before we actually made recommendations for the city was to look at what we call your accumulators. We want to know what each and every one of your employees and dependents have currently satisfied towards their deductible or towards their out-of-pocket on the current plans. It gives us a good idea of the utilization that current employees and dependents are using on the plan. The green column that you see here, that's the plan 3748. That's the current plan that is offered. That plan does not have a deductible, but it does have an out-of-pocket maximum of $1,500. And that's what we looked at going back to 2015. So if you see in 2015, we had 3 individuals. Now that includes dependents as well. We only had 3 people hit that maximum out of pocket. In 2016, we had 4 total individuals hit that out of pocket. In 2017, we had 2 hit the out of pocket. And currently so far through May data, we have no one who has satisfied that out of pocket maximum on the 3748 plan. So what that means is the plan that you currently offer with what your employees are using their insurance for, they're not completely exhausting the plan.
I'm trying to look at this chart. You said the green line, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm totally colorblind. I don't know which one's green.
Oh, I'm sorry, on the left-hand side.
I'm trying to ask everybody which one's green.
I apologize for that.
Is it the one on the
The
left?
column on the left.
Okay.
Yes. The column on the left shows your the past 3 years, the accumulators for the plan. The column on the right in orange is the 3359 plan. And this plan does have a deductible. And what we tracked on this plan was to actually see how many employees or dependents have hit or satisfied that $1,000 deductible. In 2015, we only had 1. In 2016, nobody met that deductible. In 2017, we had 1, and so far in 2018, with through May data, we have 1 as well. So what this tells us with these particular plans is these plans are very copay driven. So instead of having to satisfy a deductible first or paying coinsurance, the employees have a set copay amount that they're used to paying, whether it be for an office visit, whether it be for prescription drugs or hospital stay, emergency room. So they don't have to satisfy that deductible, which is why you see those numbers are fairly low. So we wanted to look at this to say, okay, would a switch to a different plan, would a removal of a plan, in this case the 3748, how much would that impact our employees? How much would it impact if we moved to a plan that did have a deductible, seeing here that most people don't even use the plan for services that require them to meet the deductible first. And I can go into sort of further detail about that on the comparison that we put together. While looking at the deductible accumulator, when I was here a couple weeks ago, we also wanted to just look at total claims, just to give you an idea of the total claims paid out for the past 3 years for the actual city during the what we call the calendar year that we're watching here. So it's calendar year, it's a little bit different from renewal data that you've seen, but you'll be able to see here from 2015 through 2018 total what Florida Blue / PRM has paid in claims for the city of Madeira Beach. Any questions on these two slides before I go into?
Yeah, what's the dollar amount you took in versus that for the premium?
Do you have the premium details?
I don't have it offhand.
What is the premium taken in for each year? I mean, they're saying they spent $307,801 for that year, but how much are the premiums that were paid in? It's just an informational question, really.
But I think I think it's communicated in previous slides that claims to premium ratio, we have exceeded what we pay in premiums to the tune of a couple of % every year, and that's why we're seeing the increase in the insurance. But I think that's communicated in the previous
No,
slide.
I understand that they did it in a percentage. I'm just wondering what the dollars were
The
that we
total,
actually paid in.
an estimated total premium for 2018 would be right around 500,000.
Okay.
What we also looked at, and again, I'll go into further detail on my side-by-side comparison, was incorporating a new plan. So not only would we look into removing the 3748 plan, we would also look into adding what we call a high deductible health plan, a HSA compatible plan. So this is just a snapshot of that plan. And again, I'm going to go into further detail here on this handout. It's this handout that I have separate from the actual presentation here. And there's just a few items that I want to point out. We have the rates at the very bottom, so you can see the rates for each plan. Up at the top, we sort of have the names that the city currently uses for their plans. So the 3748 is the current option in that first column. We would be moving the employer-paid plan from the 3748 to the 3359, that second column. That 3359 is already a current plan, and a lot of your employees use that to add spouse coverage for their dependents. The two columns next to that, which say new for 2018, that's the HSA compatible plan that I referenced. One column, the 5180, is for single coverage. That's why you'll see at the bottom the rate is only there for employee only. And then the 5181 is the coverage for family. And in this case, family is anything over an employee. So you'll see the rates outlined there for the family coverage. And then the final column there is what we call the ACA plan. That's the plan 5901. That is a current option here at the city that we will not be removing.
And just to tell you the cost, 10% increase for that plan that we're currently in, that 3748. With a 10% increase, that payment would be $856.40, and it was $77,890. So that ought to tell you what the increase was in our current plan. And so the plan, the second column plan, instead of going up to $856.40 in comparison, apples to apples, on the bottom of page 10, it's $720.52.
And that one doesn't include the HSA part, correct?
Correct.
What is the HSA part?
Well, with the actual HSA plan, for anyone that wants to have a health savings account, they would have to enroll in either the 5180 or the 5181 plan. You have to have an HSA compatible plan in order to have a health savings account. With a health savings account, it gives you as the employee and you as the employer an opportunity to contribute funds on a pre-tax basis into a health savings account. By doing this, it allows you to not only pay for health expenses that you may have under your medical plan here, whether it's a copayment,
Deductible or anything.
right, deductible, any of those. You can also use it to pay for dental expenses, for vision expenses.
It's like a flexible benefit account?
Exactly.
What's the difference?
The difference between the two is that health savings account, you own that money, so it rolls over from year after year. So with a flexible spending account, you have to spend. With a health
Right.
savings account, you
Use
can
it or lose
save.
it.
Right.
So the health savings, depending, it doesn't matter who puts the money in, whether it's the employee or, they don't get it at the end of the year. If they don't spend it all, it just rolls over into
Correct.
what happens in the
Correct.
next year.
Yes, that, the health savings account is actually an employee-owned account, just like a debit account or checking account. It's theirs, it's their money to keep. If they were to leave employment, it would still be their money to keep.
Even if the city put the money in there?
Correct, yes.
I
Yeah,
don't
so it
agree
would
with that,
still.
but how much is typically put in this account?
Well, employers can fund up to the deductible amount. The maximum amount that an employee and employer combined can fund is around $3,400 in a calendar year. So usually what people look into doing is they look at the difference potentially in what they're currently paying in premium for an employee, or what the employee is used to paying out of their own paycheck for health insurance. And sometimes they'll put the difference in if there's a savings by moving to the health savings account plan in premium, or they can contribute up to an amount that they feel comfortable with out of their own pocket. It's strictly a financial decision that each employee can make. Your decision as an employer, if you want to fund it, is something you can do, and that's a set amount that you can decide for all employees as a whole that enroll on the actual plan. Since you don't have a lot of employees that are completely exhausting their health insurance benefit, and that's kind of what we wanted to point out with that accumulator report, you don't have 50% of your population meeting that out-of-pocket maximum. You know, they're not using all their benefits, so they could be in an opportunity to roll over funds year after year, and they can use that money not just on themselves, they can use it for any IRS qualified dependent. So if they've got kids that need braces, that's money they can use for that. That the children, the dependents, do not have to be enrolled on the plan in order for an employee to use the money for them. So a lot of employees may say, hey, I really don't go to the doctor that much. I just have a routine physical here or there. That doesn't cost me anything. I don't really pick up any prescriptions, but I've got 2 kids that I know are gonna need braces, or I've gotta pay for a couple sets of glasses next year. I'd really like to start saving money for that. This is an opportunity for them to do it on a pre-tax basis.
You'll see a lot in the private sector too. This has been a push for the last several years, because what it really does is it promotes consumerism. So when you see, especially with 2018, where your claims number is so far in May, what it does, it forces people to become better consumers with their health dollars, because they are responsible for meeting the deductible with certain services before they're going to get paid. So they've got dollars in an account. They're making better decisions with regard to how to spend healthcare dollars, because they actually own the dollars that are being spent, as opposed to years ago when you had an HMO where, oh, I can go to the doctor because it's a $5 copay, and there was nothing to make them stop and think, well, do I really need to go to the doctor? And so what it's doing is it's pushing better healthcare choices and better healthcare decisions, going to the freestanding outpatient surgery versus going to a hospital. There are certain things where there are lower cost options available that people will pursue when they know it's actually coming out of their own account versus when it's just a copay-driven health plan. The other advantage of the consumer-driven type of plans like a health savings account, it's very appealing to folks that either they want to have the insurance in case they've got major issues, but they don't have them today. They're relatively healthy. They use the health plan when they need it, but they don't need it that often. So rather than paying a higher premium to get rich benefits they don't use, they can enroll in a plan that costs them less premium and put money aside in an account for the future. And especially with people actively working, I know I'm one of them. I have a health savings account, and I don't tap into it because I'd rather that money that's in that account accrue and grow, so that down the road I've got a substantial amount of money in there that I use when I actually need it. Because right now I'm working, right now I have a paycheck, and if I can afford to pay the $100 or $200 or $300 for a service, I might as well do it because I've got that active cash flow, knowing that I'm going to have this pool of money for later on when I actually may need to come up with a big chunk of money, which is not always easy to find. So there are a couple of advantages, and you'll see it a lot in the private sector nowadays, that it's a big push to go to this kind of consumer-driven, forcing employees to become better consumers with their healthcare dollars.
And just to sort of piggyback off that, this is the HSA compatible plan is a first dollar benefit plan, which means that, like Paul said, you're paying upfront that deductible, which is completely opposite from the current plans that the city offers. On your current plan structure, you're used to seeing a copayment, and you just pay the copayment, whatever that may be for your services. On the Blue Options HSA compatible plans, you have a deductible first for all services except for preventive care. Your preventive care, we waive the deductible for that. But you have that upfront cost, so you may have an employee that is receiving a prescription drug that they're used to paying a $25 copay for, that now they may have to pay $85 for a month's supply. That $85 is working towards bringing that deductible amount down, and they have the money, or they may have the money in their health savings account to pay for it. But that is a little bit different. So many times, the first year, you don't see a lot of employees jumping to this plan first. Even though the idea of a health savings account and seeing that money in an account seems exciting to the employees, it's still a little bit of a fear of the unknown that, hey, when I go to the doctor, it's not a specialist copay, it's not a PCP copay. I have to actually pay the contractual amount that provider has with Florida Blue for services. So, for example, a doctor's office could be between $80 or $250, depending on what type of physician you're seeing. But again, that amount that the employee is paying is working towards that deductible. Once they hit that $2,500 deductible, all services for the remainder of the calendar year are covered at 100%.
And I definitely wanted to hit on that to kind of talk about some of the things that we've had some internal discussions, that if you look at just that plan versus the other plan, the Blue 03359, where the cost is $720 per month per participant, and you look at your high deductible health plan, there's substantial difference in cost. And so what we had said that effectively, if we make the modification to a high deductible health plan with a health savings account and say we're going to seed, let's say, $750 in that account, and then if the employees do their biometric screenings and their preventative care, you give them a wellness incentive to get it up to $1,000, that they know that any costs associated with health care or any other comparable expenses, visiting an eye doctor, going to the dentist, what have you, that once that $1,000 is gone, all the other expenses are the responsibility of the employee. So like it was stated earlier, it provides for them to say, instead of going to the emergency room, do I go to the Minute Clinic or look for other options because I know there's a finite amount of resources. Also, the other side is if you have employees that effectively don't utilize their health savings account, it rolls over next year, and if there's additional seed money that's put in there, effectively in a 2.5-year span or a 3-year span, you can have enough money in your health savings account that if anything happens, your health insurance is free for that calendar year. So we thought, hey, this is an opportunity to promote employees being informed and making good, competent decisions on healthcare and sharing effectively in the risk versus I can just go to the hospital or go to the doctor because there's really no incentive for me to make other informed health decisions. A lot of agencies have utilized this health savings account in a high deductible health plan exclusively, and they have two offerings: a high deductible health plan with a health savings account, and then the basic plan that the federal government requires you to offer, because it's a way to control the expenditures associated with health. To get back to, if we had a plan in place such as this, and we looked at where healthcare costs are, for us to get from the $720 where we are now with the existing plan, it would have taken 4 years or 5 years for us to get to that 720 had we instituted something like this earlier. If you would have just said, okay, based on claims to premium ratio and the market and those types of things. So this is effectively slowing down, this plan is slowing down what the incremental increases are with healthcare, and anything that we can do to, in essence, control our own destiny and stop the increase of healthcare at the rate it's going is better for us because we have no idea what's going to happen in Washington and how there's a profound impact of what, folks outside of our community, both on a state and national level, do to the healthcare industry, because we've seen some dramatic changes in costs since the, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act and all those different nuances that are associated with that piece of legislation. So this was something to say, can we incentivize employees to consider this option, in essence saving the city money and then putting some seed money in there that if at the end of the year that there's $700 remaining, they can effectively use that to send their children to summer camp or daycare, and that's a qualified expense. So it really does encourage folks to make informed decisions versus the other plan. As you can see, we weren't hitting the deductible, but we were paying a premium for a plan that was not being utilized to its full capacities.
And just to touch on that, with the removal of the 3748 plan, should you have employees that are not comfortable moving to that HSA compatible, that high deductible plan, the 3359 plan, which is the one currently offered as well by the city, that plan is still copay driven. So employees, even though they have a deductible on that plan, as you saw in that slide that I showed you with the accumulators, a lot of people aren't using a benefit that applies a deductible first anyway. A lot of people are just using the copay. Where you see a copay, you just pay the copay amount. So what we've kind of done a little comparison there between the 3748 and the 3359. And with how much you're saving in premium, you're looking at an additional $10 that an employee may have to pay at a primary care physician, an additional $15 for a specialist. For emergency room and hospital stays, you're looking at $50 increase in a copayment for that, or $100, depending on the type of benefit, whether it's inpatient or outpatient. So yes, the actual copayment amounts have gone up a little bit, but what we're also doing is reducing that premium amount and giving the employee the option, if they want, to move to a plan where they can actually put some money aside if they want and put it in their HSA plan. A really important part to note between the two plans, the 3748 and the 3359, those first two columns, is the prescription drug coverage is exactly the same. So if you have somebody on the current plan who's getting, certain medications, if they're paying a certain copayment every month, they're going to see absolutely positively no change in their prescription drug coverage on this new particular plan, the 3359. So that's just something to think about as well. We're not just steering people to that high deductible plan. We're also tweaking, there's a little bit of a higher copayment on the 3359, but it's still a plan that employees are used to using. They're used to having copays, and it's a plan that would also, if they're comfortable with that route, they can go that route as well.
Go ahead. Okay. I just wanted to ask, on the prescription plan, is it still the tier program with some of the medications?
For the, for which plan, the high deductible plan or the?
Well, you said that the
30
prescription drug coverage was the same
Yes.
under the two.
So on the 3359,
Okay.
the plans, the prescription drugs and whatever tier they currently fall in under the 3748 plan will be exactly the same.
The same.
Yep. Our medication guide stays the same regardless of which plan you're in. The only difference would be if there's a different copay amount, which in this case there isn't.
Okay.
The only difference with the plans we're showing here would be that HSA compatible plan. That for prescription drugs, like I said, you've got to satisfy the deductible first. So somebody that's used to paying a $25 brand copay when they go pick up the medication may have to pay more, depending on what that contractual rate is between Florida Blue and the pharmacy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And which one is the city recommending?
He is recommending the second column and the employer paid, and as I indicated before, I'll repeat it again because I know this is a lot of information, a lot of numbers, but the first column is what we currently have, that
Right.
03748. We are currently paying $778.90 for this plan. It was going to increase 10% to $856.40.
I understand all that, okay. Why do we keep talking about the savings accounts if we're not even looking at that?
Because it's something we can offer.
We're looking at the health savings account just as an option.
So
And
that would put them into a different plan then, correct?
Correct. So with the city currently offering 3 plans and the removal of one plan completely, the 3748, we were looking at an option to add a 3rd plan back in. So the employees had 3 plans to choose from as well this year for their upcoming open enrollment. So that was when we decided, well, the plan that's going to become employer paid is already a current plan that's offered by the city, that second column, the 3359. So what could we do to add in a 3rd plan? And that's when, the recommendation came that why don't we look into a high deductible compatible plan or a health savings account plan. So it's basically just a different option.
Looking at the different plans, like the 5181. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand this. Under employee, there's no cost, but the employee's paying the family, correct?
Under the, employees cannot enroll in the 5181 alone, only family coverage.
Right, I'm saying, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the employee would pay the 5180, and then the additional amount would be the family coverage listed in those tiers.
And that's additional, right?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think so.
it's not built in. No, it's built in.
No, it's built in, it's
Yeah,
built in.
It's built in,
Yeah.
okay.
I guess, listening to what city manager said and reading these things, if we're going to pay $720 for an employee, okay, under the 3359, correct? And we go to the employee and say, listen, go into either the 5180 or the 5181, depending on if you're married or not, and then we're not, on the 51, if they're doing a family, they're not paying for the employee. The employee's paying for his family, correct?
Correct.
But the employee's not. And we say to them, listen, if you do this, and we, the city, would put X amount of dollars into the health savings account for you, and would not have, and that would save us the $720. So if we say, for every month, we're gonna put $500 into your savings account, we just save $220 per employee. Am I correct am I saying this right?
The
or-
contribution would just be an annual contribution.
Right.
Right, so you
But-
wouldn't do it monthly.
But I'm just looking
Yeah.
at the 720 versus if we put 500 in, then that would be an additional savings. Am I making sense?
Well, I don't think we need to pay the whole deductible because they
No,
still
no.
got to have some buy-in to it.
No, I know, but I'm saying right now, if we stay with the second column,
Right.
we're gonna be paying $720.50 per each employee.
Right.
So if we say, okay, we'll put money into your health savings account below that dollar amount, then whatever dollar amount we come up with, the city has just saved. So versus if we put 500 in versus the 700, or if we put 600 in versus the 700, then the city has saved $100 per employee. Am I right?
I don't think
No,
so.
no, because we're still spending the $500.
Right.
But instead of spending 700,
No. They're still going to have a deductible of
Can't equate it to
$652 in that plan. No, I mean a premium of $652 for the 5180 for the employee
if it's employee only.
only.
Correct.
Right, but that's all they'd be paying anyway, because if the employee has a family, they're going to be paying the $1258. That's
But-
their responsibility.
But, okay, let's say it's an employee that does not have a family.
Right.
And we take the difference from 652 to 720, we put 50 or 60 bucks into health savings to get them some skin in the game, so to say. And then, like you said, they would have the money at the end of the year or whatever. And then we start, how do I want to say this? We start, I don't know. Be quiet.
Well, we'll move
We start-
more
we start-
consumer-oriented.
Yeah, we start teaching them
Employee.
to make this,
Right.
like a
That's
savings
correct.
account for them down the road.
But that doesn't save us
Well-
any money.
If, let's say we only put 700, or 652, and we make it 700, so we save $20. That's $20 more than we'd be saving.
No, I don't think you got, we're going to pay the $652 anyway. Whatever we put into the health savings account is
Right.
over that.
Right, so if we put $50 in the health savings account.
Okay.
Then it's at 700, and we're 720 for the other plan, so we've just saved $20.
Okay.
Oh, I see
I'm
where
with
you're
you there. I'm
But
with you.
it's making them start to think and utilize and save and do these things properly. That's what I'm saying.
And to your point, Commissioner, you're right from the standpoint is that we want to promote consumer-driven decisions to where the new plan, let's say the 3359, that plan is, similar to your traditional plan that you've offered, and there's really not as much skin in the game to where if you have overutilization on that plan, you're going to see the incremental increases you're going to see increases on that invariably if you see a lot of usage. With the high deductible health plan, with the health savings account, based on the data and the information, we believe that most of your employees are going to find themselves where their costs for health insurance or their out-of-pocket expense is going to be well under that $1,000. And if we can keep it well under that $1,000, when we go for renewals, we're going to get a more favorable rate. And then the employees can say, okay, if I have $1,000 or $750, I roll that into next year. That just makes it easier for me that in case I have a planned surgery or those kind of things, that at least I have that out-of-pocket max there. So it makes the employees think about, should I go to the emergency room or should I just decide to call my physician in the morning and go see my doctor or go to the Minute Clinic versus utilizing the emergency room services where you're on the hook for a lot more.
And I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is, I used to have a health savings account when I worked for the federal government. And it took me 2 or 3 years to convince myself to do that, to start saving that money. Both, it helps me with my taxes and, everything else.
Yeah.
But, but our employees here have never had it. So, you're going to have very few that's going to opt into it because they don't know the benefits.
Right.
They don't understand it. And that's kind of why I'm saying, if we make an incentive for them to make it, this is a better plan because in the long run, I'm going to make more money and it's tax deductible, et cetera,
And I can tell you from my experience, the way the program becomes more successful and more prominent to your employee base is when the employees start talking, and then at the end of the summer, when somebody says, I've got $700 left over, I'm going to enroll my kid in summer camp and pay for it with my HSA, and the other person says, well, why didn't I consider that? I only utilized, and we have the data to show, and we can even during open enrollment, we're going to offer to have that conversation with employees to say, listen, Jonathan, when we look at your expense, you've only spent $350. So if you were to look at this plan effectively pays for itself based on what you have. We can show them actual data as to how they utilize the plan to really have them make an informed consumer decision.
And that's kind of what I'm saying with the HSA.
Can you pay for summer camp?
Yeah, you can pay for daycare services.
Dependent care services.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a win-win for everybody, is the way I see
Oh, I see.
it, using the HSA, because I used it for many years, so I understand it. But if you've never, but like I said, after it first came to us at the federal government, it was like, why am I putting money into there? Why? And it took me a while to kind of figure it out and watching other people. That's what I'm saying, and our employees have never had that here, to get them started. We need some type of incentive to get them started to look at it. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
And one more thing, just from I hate to just be the financial person here, but, and mention the figures, but later on, after this, we will be able to show you, with plugging in these reduced numbers, that we would be able to save an amount that we could push toward putting that $1,000 or whatever that dollar amount is to setting that up.
Mayor, can I ask a question? If John's through? John, are you through? Are you through?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to ask a couple questions, and it's with regards to the premiums, okay? The $720.52 and the figures under the 03359 are all of them, okay? That includes all the Blue Cross, all that, and all of the reinsurance premium? Okay, and everything else. does that also include the ancillary benefits, the vision, the dental, the long-term disability, and the life insurance?
No, that does not.
No,
Okay, it does not.
no, it's strictly
Okay.
medical.
Okay, so we have that somewhere else, even though it's in this package. I mean, even though the benefit itself is listed in this package, right? It
we-
is, it says, where does it say that on page? Well, just if you go to page 16, it talks about the vision benefits.
Right. Later on, we do outline the other benefits that the city offers through PRM.
Okay,
Those benefits are separate and
okay.
apart from the.
That's fine, that's, okay, that was
Right,
what I
but
was
for the
asking.
numbers right now that we're dealing with,
Okay,
it's strictly medical.
the health insurance, okay. Yeah, then I have to, I've been listening, certainly to this conversation, and while I'm not really real knowledgeable on the flex, I remember the old flex benefit, but the way you're explaining it now makes a whole lot more sense, and it's a lot more education on the part of the employer, and I think that that's good, because I think that all in all, our employees are our most valuable asset, and I think that while we change, anytime we make a change like this, we need to be able to be very explanatory to them as to why that we're making it. But I think it's critical that the current plan, that 03748, become null and void. I can't imagine. I mean, I had to look at this other thing 3 times where you said Madeira Beach offers 3 plans to its employees, and I thought, well, why would
Well,
anybody do anything?
And that's
except for
why,
0-0?
and that's why when we were down at the PRM conference recently, we went up to Bridget and talked to her, and she said, I don't even know why you're in that plan.
Right. And I thank you very much for that. That's very important. But I do think that since our employees are our greatest asset, we certainly want to make sure that we offer a good plan to them. And I think that with the blues and with the reinsurance, I still, I guess I have to be educated a little bit on the 05180 or the 81, because I have a tendency toward the 03359.
5-9 plan.
And one of the
From
things.
my old-time traditional school, I guess, whatever.
And we anticipate that, the first year when we roll out the high deductible health plan with the health savings account, that you're gonna get a small fraction of your employees that end up jumping in there. We anticipate that those employees that receive the benefit on the lower tier would look to say effectively upgrade and go to the high deductible health plan with the health savings account. But we anticipate, as communication occurs and how the plan works, that in subsequent open enrollments that we're going to have and more employees look at this as a viable option, and that we're moving some cheese, but it's not something that employees have to be concerned about, because we are providing an opportunity for some seed money, and then we are going to provide a kind of a full-out blitz on the informational aspects. Because one of the things that I would like to do as part of the open enrollment process is that day where the employees are here for open enrollment, effectively suspend city operations. So when we sit down and have conversations with employee, telling them to invite their spouse or their decision makers in their household, so they can hear how the plan works, what the benefit structure consists of, because they're we want them to make an informed consumer decision, because ultimately the decisions that they make on that day will impact their family tremendously. And so we want to make sure that everyone leaves there with a good understanding and a good knowledge base on what the plan consists of, and showing them the actual data and pulling them aside to say, hey, Jonathan, this is what you've utilized, this is what the cost is, and this is another option that you may want to consider, and then make that decision based on the information and facts, not something that you just, for peace of mind's sake, you just want to go to that 3359. If they ultimately make that decision, that's their decision to make, but at least they feel that they are not being rushed out to go and get back out there in the field. We want them to make a good decision, because ultimately, once that decision is made, you have to live with whatever that decision is, unless there's a qualifying event or until next open enrollment.
And just, with what Jonathan said, with making that decision and keeping it basically that way for a year. Should you have an employee that decides to take the high deductible plan this year, and then they say, you know what, it wasn't for me, I miss having co-payments, I wasn't able to put as much money aside as I thought I could, they can always switch back to the 3359, the employer-paid plan, next open enrollment, and they can still use whatever money is left over in their HSA while they're on that plan. The only thing you can't do with an HSA plan is contribute money into it if you're not on a compatible plan. So many times we have people make the switch, decide, you know what, that wasn't the plan for me, they may move back, but they could still have money in that account to use. Or if they know that they're gonna have, you know, in 2 or 3 years, they're gonna have a major hospital expense, and maybe they want that plan with the lower copays, you know, they can switch to that plan at open enrollment and still use that money in their health savings account. You just have to be enrolled in the high deductible plan in order to contribute monies into that account. So it doesn't go away. It's something that, you know, employees can use and sort of make the best financial decisions for them and their family.
I have one more question, Bridget.
Sure.
Is all of that, is the HSA, is all of that tracked by the TPA?
Yeah, we actually, Florida Blue has a vendor that we partner with, their Health Equity, and that's our banking vendor for the HSA. If for some reason the city would prefer to partner with a local bank or a different administrator, you can do that as well. But Florida Blue does offer a TPA that handles the claims processing. All the claims automatically feed to this TPA, and we'll be able to you know, help the members make payments or get reimbursed for payments they may have made outside of using their health savings account.
Okay, thank you.
So a couple of clarification or direction that we would need from the board so we can effectively proceed is that the board is comfortable with the modifications as proposed by staff, and then is the board comfortable with providing some seed money for the health savings account. We had internal conversations about the opportunity to put $750 with another $250 increase in the event that they do some of the preventative care, you know, biometric screenings, those types of things, to incentivize the employee to say, okay, if I participate in Karen's Health Fair and I effectively go and do my preventative care, that there would be another $250 that would be placed in that account. In my conversations with the finance director, there is money available to complete that as being proposed by staff, but it really boils down to what the pleasure of the board is as far as providing that seed money in that health savings account.
I don't think we need to put that much into it. Now you're taking everything that they're supposed to be controlling as far as they're concerned, as far as their health care is concerned. You're taking that away, and you're just saying, well, we're going to pay your deductible. So they have no buy-in to the program itself.
But I'm trying to provide that proverbial carrot to get them to consider, instead of going with the 720 plan or that 3359, to look at the cheaper alternative, because that incentive is there for them to do that. Because if we move a large segment of our employee population to that high deductible health plan, invariably when we go for renewals, I think you'll see a lower renewal rate versus if they stay on that plan. And that would be something that I would defer to the experts in the room. When you have seen organizations really promote that high deductible health plan with the health savings account, is their renewal rates impacted if they have a large portion of their employee workforce on those plans versus, you know, the traditional plans that we have offered in the past?
Paul, I'll kind of defer to you.
Yeah, it certainly helps drive down claims costs, which in turn drives down claims experience and renewals. And I mean, an easy example to explain that is actually the renewal rates themselves that are here. Because when our actuaries set the rates, they set the rates based on the dollars that they need to collect to pay anticipated claims. So when you see a plan priced at a lower premium amount, it means that we are anticipating that there'll be less claims incurred under that plan itself, which ultimately will drive down overall claims costs. And when you drive down overall claims costs, obviously it's going to drive down the potential renewal increase. So they do go hand in hand.
And how many employees do we have?
59 59 employees that receive that health benefits, total of 70 employees. But then the employees can buy up or will buy coverage for their families, so which in essence adds lives to the plan as well. So.
What dollar amount were you saying, Jonathan?
We said $750 with a recommendation of $250 in the event that the employee does all the biometrics, screenings, and the preventative visits and all those different things that Karen will create for the employee to accomplish to get that additional $250 in their health savings account.
And again, as Bridget indicated, with 59, we will have 59 positions in next year's budget. Some people will be skeptical about taking this. So, if we have running the numbers, if we've got about 25,000 to allocate to this, that's probably all we would need.
I don't agree with loading it all up. I still think they need to buy into it. I would be willing to go for 500 into the account.
You could do that for the first year and then change it or increase it as you
Well,
go.
we can do, once the budget comes around every year, we can figure out where we are at that point.
If you get not a very much, if you start off with 1,000, if you start off with 1,000 in the account, and you really don't get the enrollment that you think that you're going to get, okay, which would have to indicate that people just they don't understand it or they don't want it, then we can go down to the 500 the next renewal year. Right.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, one of the things that if it is the board's pleasure to effectively go down and utilize 500, it would be staff's recommendation if the board would consider some type of dollar amount to incentivize some of the preventative care items. That's one of the big things. If we really want to effectuate change in what the cost for health insurance is, we need to make sure our employees are really taking a vested interest in, following some of the tools that are already in the existing plan to lifestyle behaviors, because 70% of your costs in healthcare is based on modifiable behaviors. So if we can effectively effectuate change by educating and promoting a real wellness program, there is some value to that. So whatever the dollar amount the board feels comfortable with, staff would just respectfully request some type of an amount to have that proverbial carrot. So when Karen does roll out that wellness program, folks are going to really want to participate because there's some value to it. So that's the perspective from staff.
And if I could offer one other comment. So whether you fund 500 or 750 or 1,000, whatever that number is, it's still something short of what the single person deductible is in that high deductible plan. So they would still, after whatever the board chose to contribute, there'd still be a responsibility on the employee to meet additional deductible dollars before the benefits are paid at 100%. So there still is some consumerism built into that. It's just at what level do you want that to kick in after you're encouraging them to participate in that program.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because when I've looked at it again, I think I was maybe it was confusing. I was looking at the deductible, the in-network, for instance, the deductible on that 03359, and then looking to see where it goes with the, 05180 and 81, and I think I'd go with 1,000. I would like to see that. Okay, I'd like to do the 1,000 into the HSA and see how it works. At first, I was thinking definitely not, but I think that we are requiring, even though y'all might not think it, because we're still paying entire employee premium, but we are making the employee make a contribution in the form of, the amounts up to what the Blues are going to pay to begin with. So that's why I think that the $1,000 is a more realistic thing, and we're still going to save money. And I think that because our insurance has been in the certainly a wonderful freebie range for so long, I think that this is a responsible way to look at it, is to put that $1,000 in, to go with the 05180 and the 05181 as a primary or as a priority kind of plan with that HSA, and then offer the 03359 for those that don't want to participate. That's the way I feel about it.
I don't understand how you said you're still saving money, Debbie. Explain.
Well, that will show us I think that we would. And I don't know that I could show it right here.
Clearly.
In other words, if I multiplied the number of employees times the premium time whatever.
Clearly.
$59,000.
But we're not, I think.
Well, clearly, if they go to the 5180 on the third column, their monthly contribution, the city's payment will be $652.78.
Right.
As opposed to $720.52. Now, just so the commission understands, for budgeting purposes, I use the $720.52 for every employee for budgeting purposes. Because,
It's the higher up.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna,
right.
And realistically, by communicating and encouraging the employees to look at all options, but looking at that high deductible health plan with that seed money, if this year we get 10 people, but next year we get 59 people, you're going to see a really huge difference in what your renewal rates will come back as, and maybe even a situation where, flat is the new up in the healthcare industry. And you have now educated a workforce to say, okay, well, maybe the two plans you offer is the high deductible health plan with the health savings account, and then you offer the plan that you're required by the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So there's nothing that says you have to offer, 3 or 4 or 5 different plans, but we wanted to kind of turn the tide and really look to make some changes, because as the chart shows that we've been running not the best when it comes to claim to premium ratio, and insurance companies are eventually going to, and when the actuarial scientists look at the data, that's when you're going to get the 10% increase. And if you go with a plan, if you don't start making some modifications to the plan, inevitably it's going to go up. So we're sharing in the actual savings with the employee. But the reality is that we think that you may get 7 to 10 people that choose to participate in this plan. And if that's the case, you're still experiencing a lower cost for the insurance than if you were paying that $720 or and then the exposure and the additional exposure as they utilize that plan.
Again, it's going to be year 2 when the employees talk to the other employees who go in it and share the advantages that they've learned. That year 2, that's really when you're going to see the spike of people going into there.
But I also think that, if we start off by saying, okay, we're going to throw $1,000 seed money in, then we're going to have to do that every year, or they're going to pull out real quick, I think that's inevitable. If you're going to give me $1,000, now next year you're going to only give me $800 or $600 or $700 or nothing. I'm going back to the other plan. Why would I stay here? So.
Well, and I think to that point, I think it's a powerful thing when that employee receives that debit card and they know that there's $500 on there, even if we made a modification to say, this year we're going to go with 1,000 and next year it's going to be 500 or 750 or those types of things. The reality is right now if they select the 3359, their first, they have to pay out of pocket and there's some copay, but there's something with somebody knowing that I've got $500 or $1,000 on this debit card that I can utilize for dental expenses, to help pay for braces for kids, to help pay for dependent daycare, all those different, help pay for prescription medication, that I'm not utilizing my paycheck that is already taxed, and then utilizing that money to buy a prescription medication where I can utilize pre-tax dollars to effectively purchase a prescription and all those different things. So we're hoping that whatever dollar amount the board is comfortable with, it encourages the employees to say, okay, if I walk away from this plan, I'm walking away from $500 or $1,000 or whatever the number is the board
I
is
understand,
comfortable with.
I just didn't agree with the $1,000 amount, but I think, if we did 500 plus the 250, if they met all those qualifications, I thought that would be, just working the numbers over here, what I come up with is, on the average person, it's about $816 that going to that the city would save from the 720.52. I figured $68 a head times, 12 months, et cetera, comes to $816. That's why I'm saying, like, if we do 5 and 3 even, or 5 and 2, something like 5 and 2.5, something like that, would make more sense to me financially.
Okay, well, I would certainly, reconsider because I really didn't have except one thing in my mind, or a couple things in my mind when I said the 1,000. But no, I think if it's the desire of the board, I think the idea is to go with it, is to really, is to start it. So the 500 is, yeah.
Bridget, is the preventative care, that's with all the programs that you have, correct?
I'm sorry,
The preventative care that you have, it's with all these programs?
Yeah, it's the same,
It's all
it's
the
100%.
Okay.
So that's no copay if you're on a copay plan, and if you're on the high deductible plan, no deductible, you're covered at 100%. And just to follow up on the contribution amounts, once you have an employee that has a fully funded deductible in their health savings account, so once an employee sees $2,500 in their health savings account, they're not going to want to switch plans because their plan, in theory, is covered at 100% because they can use the $2,500 in their HSA account to pay for any medical expenses. Once you hit that $2,500, you're covered at 100%. Yeah.
And you'll also find, because we see it all the time in healthcare, once somebody's in a plan, it's just inertia. People don't move plans from year to year. When you're in a plan, you tend to stay in a plan unless there's a real reason. So if you can migrate folks to a new program, a new plan, the majority of them are going to stay in that plan just because you don't see migration year to year from plan to plan to plan. People get in a plan, they stay comfortable, it's familiar to them, and they just don't move. It's just what
I'm
we
sure you covered this before, but if we didn't see their account, how does that money get in there and what rules govern that?
The employee would contribute through the banking vendor, say, for example, Health Equity is the vendor that we use, through payroll deductions that you would be facilitated still in your HR office or your payroll office that would come out of their paycheck, but it would just be money out of their own paycheck instead
And
of...
they decide how much?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that's something they would decide every open enrollment, along with what plan they want to take. They'd figure out how much they want to contribute per paycheck.
And at the end of the tax year, they get a statement that goes with their, when they file their taxes
Right.
showing they lowered their taxable income.
Correct.
So what is the
Their
board's pleasure on the amount?
I would say 500 with,
And the 250?
In the two, yeah, I can do that.
Sure, that's.
Me too.
Yes.
All right, excellent. All right, is there any additional questions for our vendors while we have them here?
Well, we're still gonna move on to the rest of it.
Yeah.
Don't we have,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, and we just have,
I'm not going.
the information that we have in the remainder of the presentation is sort of additional ancillary products that are offered through PRM, so it's not necessarily anything we have to touch upon in this session, but it is there. If there has been anything that you viewed or you have any questions, Paul and PRM are here to answer any of those questions if you would
I
like
think
to.
this should be voluntary. All the rest of them, If you want to beef up your plan, take control of your plan, then you need vision, you need to pay for it. I don't think it should be across the board, because not everybody wears glasses.
Right.
And there's no point in paying for it, so.
By the way,
I agree.
on vision, that is not city paid. The employee pays for vision.
Okay,
dental?
vision,
What about dental and?
Dental is paid by the city.
dental should be their
Okay,
responsibility
I
as
think it
well.
should be, yeah, you go ahead if you want,
I
okay.
do, yeah.
I definitely feel that the dental, the life, even the life, okay, life always traditionally was always paid by the employer, but I think that the life, the dental, the vision, long-term or short-term disability should be the responsibility of the employee if they wish that coverage. I think it should be voluntary. They pay for it, it's deducted,
Right.
by them. I
I
think
agree.
that the city as a whole has I think we've done a responsible job in looking at the options, that the Blues and Gallagher has presented to us, but I think that's the way I'd like to see it, yes. Ancillary benefits are considered by the employees.
Well, who pays for what right now?
The employee pays for vision and dental is paid for by the city, and I think it's $5.26 per employee per pay. So if I'm not mistaken, it may be, over $10 a month that we pay for our employees for.
Thank you. But it is the
So
administration.
it's actually $5.24 per month, I stand corrected, for the dental coverage.
Okay. About life?
No.
Life and the disability and and short-term disability.
Life
Here,
and
the yearly numbers are on here.
AD&D is in its entirety is 17,600
Right.
for the organization, and then 19,400 for long-term disability. And one of the things that, if it's the board's desire to look at making modifications to the dental, life, and AD&D and long-term disability, I certainly would want to make sure that we look at what our peer agencies are doing concerning those ancillary benefits, because if we look to pass all these different costs on to the employees, we run the risk of it being a issue to retain folks and actually recruit folks, because people are making decisions based on what the benefit structure looks like. So we can certainly look at that, but I would caution the board is that if we look to pass those costs on to the employees, knowing that we may have some issues as it relates to their compensation holistically, that it may send the wrong issue or the wrong message and impact employee morale. So for us, if this is something that the board wants us to review and bring forward, and we can have a future discussion, but I would definitely caution the board to, when we look at the benefit structure, because we're already moving a lot of cheese with the health insurance. If we look to pass this on, I would certainly want to provide the employees a little bit more time than is afforded right now, because we're in July, open enrollment's in October. They're going to have to know that if you want these additional benefits to continue on, that you're going to have to foot the bill for that. And for some employees, that incremental increase or that will effectively impact the bottom line of what they bring home. I would much rather do the research, look at what our peer agencies are coming back with, and then look to bring something as part of the next budget cycle as to how do we do that. But I'm concerned if we shift too many pieces, there will be an impact on morale.
I agree with
think
I agree with the
think
city
you're talking about that
manager.
much.
Okay, but I think that, and I agree with your commenting on that, but at the same time that you do get that from peer places, I would like to know how many of those peer places that are the same size, population, same type of organization that we are, that pay 100% of the employee cost.
And we have actually asked that question from our, having conversations with our brokers and representative. And in the government sector, it is very common that the employer still pays 100% for individual coverage. So that is something that, and just to communicate to the board, when we look at compensation, our goal is to bring to the board a list of comparable agencies to where you say, based on general fund budget, size of the organization, where they're geographically located, to where the board selects, okay, we're comparable to X, Y, and Z agency, and then staff can go forth and do the analysis, because we want to make sure you're comfortable with that. When we bring that data back, there's no need to compare us to the city of Tampa when compensation and benefits and all those different things are. So for us, these accounts, it's already budgeted in the fiscal year 2019 budget. And before we make those changes, it would be staff's recommendation to allow for us to do our due diligence, do the research, and bring you back some options if that's something that you want to consider this year, because there's going to be a lot of explaining, a lot of heartburn with respect to just us moving the health insurance component of it. And I don't want us to make that decision right here without having all the data and all the figures, because it will impact the employees and the employee morale.
Well, and if we're about to go over in the next section, you know, what the general fund looks like based on the savings of the medical, and I just handed out to you the summary of the employee benefits that the employer does pay, and so there is a sizable savings that we have that we will incur. So maybe the commission, I agree with the city manager, look at the figures before deciding that.
I don't agree. They need to take control of their own destiny in their healthcare. And we have paid this for so many years, for so long, and it is not that big amount of money. It's probably not even going to equate to 4% of their salary. So they're not going to see it really cut into their salary that much. They're just not going to see as big benefit from the 4%. And we are giving them a whole 4% again this year, because there's been no process put in place to do any kind of merit incentive or any of that. And I think they need to pick this up. It's not that big a deal. And I don't believe that there are that many cities out there that are paying full boat.
I got two things to say on that. Number one, working for the federal government for 30 years, they never paid vision, they never paid dental, they never paid life insurance, they never paid disability, short or long term, period. Working for the federal government does not do that. So when you said the government, you must be talking city governments, because it's not any federal and state government does not pay. That's number one. Number two, the other option that we can look at on this, you know, if we're changing how we're doing business, and that's basically what we're saying here, is we're changing how we're doing business. I would rather do away with these things, the dental, the life, and all that kind of stuff, and put more money into the health savings account to push more people over to that. Instead of giving them $750, maybe we give them $1,500, you know, to get more people to go over that way, and then that way they can pay for these other things. Because they can pay for the health insurance, they can pay for the dental and the vision and the life through the health savings plan. So that is another way to do it, but you put it on to them. But we start off by doing that, is the way I would look at it.
And to your point, when I'm talking about government, I'm talking about local government, local municipality. The difference with federal government has pension plans, where in most, you have a lot of government entities that have effectively gotten rid of those pension plans, and you have a defined contribution versus that pension plan. But my concern is that if we start taking away those ancillary benefits and have the employees pick up the tab, to your point, I would agree that if the board wanted to move in that direction to say, I'm going to pass these costs on to the employer, then I would recommend considering putting additional seed money in that HSA to effectively pay for that. But I think if I go to employees at open enrollment and I say, here's what the insurance program looks like today, here's the modifications that we're proposing, and then by the way, you're going to have to pay for, dental, life and disability, long-term disability, if you want to have those coverages. That is something that peace of mind and that we have been providing to them, not allowing for them to have adequate time to make an informed decision, or running that out is going to have an impact on morale. I can assure you that. And so I would much rather survey the local municipalities that we are compared to see what our benefit structure looks like, than making a decision here and now that could have an impact on the recruitment and retention of our most valuable asset, our employees. We wanted to make the changes and modifications to health insurance because we heard it from the board loud and clear. We've decided to take a bite of that apple. I think we've provided an opportunity to stop the increases that we're projected to receive in the future, but we're asking from the staff standpoint if we can provide if we can get additional time to do some research, and if effectively, if we want to move to that we provide adequate notice to the employees so they can prepare for that. Because for some employees that are making $9 or $11 an hour, that $5 and $24 a month to incur additional costs for coverage, it means something. It impacts them. And the benefit does as well. So I would just.
But like I said, if we move it over to the HSA, that gets more of our people to move over to that health plan, you know, and it works for both ways.
To your point, it furthermore incentivizes them moving to that, and then we can say to the employees, the board has effectively said that you as a consumer are going to have to pay for this, but here's the mechanism that they've put in place to allow for you to pay for that. So it is you shift it, and they effectively have skin in the game when we're talking about those types of benefits. That would be something more palatable and easier to sell to the employees versus, telling a solid waste employee that makes, $9.88 an hour that they're effectively going to have to see increases in some of these other ancillary benefits. And I would just caution the board on making that decision without us doing our due diligence or looking to provide some additional seed funds to mitigate the impact.
When you say an employee is making $10 an hour, what is he really making, he or she really making when you kick in the health insurance, the life insurance, the vision insurance, the dental insurance, the disability? They're
Workers'
making
comp,
$15,
everything
$16
else.
an hour.
Yeah.
Well,
that's-
and I understand that, but they see from what comes into that paycheck, and that's the hard part.
But our job is to look at the bottom line and what it's costing the city. And I understand, Joe's making $10 an hour, but does he realize, with his health benefits, with his, dental plan for him and his family, all these other things, what the real cost is? And that's what we have got to look at, sitting up here. That's the decisions we got. And
But
they're not easy
I would like
decisions.
to see the city manager in the same way as he's just described. Our intent is the same. Our intents, I think, are basically, we have agreed what we want to do, okay? It's just how we wish to move those certain funds. So I think it would be a good idea to get those comparisons, okay, on those light-funded cities, and then make our decision at that point, still knowing that our intent is still to use these plans that we've had the option of. Do y'all agree? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
I agree with that.
Okay. I do too. Okay.
Well, I think you're right. We should perhaps survey cities, find out what they're doing. And if you say to them, you're going to have to pay for these yourself now, but now we're going to give you $750 or $500 or whatever we decide. And so you can make your own decisions.
The other thing is, it is right now, unfortunately, a big unknown. As Bridget indicated, how many people would go in there?
Right.
Maybe we could keep these dollars in here budgeted, then once open enrollment comes and we know how many of those people there are, we then have a better idea of moving those dollars around.
And we've still done our due diligence. I mean, we've still have, I think, very clearly made some decisions which will impact our entire city, even though we're not leaving with the exact same focus we had, or maybe that I had when I came in. But that's how I'd like to leave it.
Well, I don't want to see, if you look at it now, and if we don't do it now and take the steps to make them, have them be responsible for their dental, vision, and all that, next year, if we come in and do it because we find that that's what most municipalities are doing, then it's every year, here they come, they're going to chop it again, Let's just cut the head off and go.
Well, maybe we can, I guess what I'm saying is, maybe we can still massage those funds, okay? Not call it a gimmick or not call it anything else, but just say it just like it is. And here's what we intend to do. So instead of the $500 in that health savings account, it now becomes $750 or $1,000, okay? But all I'm saying is right now,
I don't want to pay it full boat though.
Pardon?
Because if you pay it full boat, you're just moving it from one to the other, and they're gonna get, we're still paying it.
But
So,
Nancy-
so if you get them to have some buy-in to what they're doing, that's the whole point.
well, and I think that they already have some buy-in, okay? I do think that they have some buy-in with us changing our plans, okay? There's something that they're going to have to pay. And I think that that's the trend. I think what we're talking is really kind of maybe nitpicking a little bit, and I think that as Walt brings us back, and as Jonathan brings us back figures, and we can do that specific allocation.
Yeah, and just one more thing. I mean, we don't want the employees to be afraid of the HSA and then compound it and not take it and switch to the first plan here that we're recommending and then get hit by this as well. I mean, it would just make things doubly worse for them. I just think there needs to be time for education, and educate them through the process. I mean, we're talking about something new. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm even leery about going into it the first year. I want to see how it works. So you may not have the employees jump and do that. And then if you cut these other things that what the city's been providing, it will be a double hit for them, particularly compounding the fact that we're making a change in the medical plan.
Right.
There's enough to absorb here with just that.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also think that what we're also not considering that Paul made the comment on is that, a lot of that, it's a risk, okay? We don't know what we're gonna save in claims dollars, okay? But there certainly is that probability that a lot's gonna be, we don't know what percentage it's gonna be, but that is gonna be saved. So it's still a savings to the city, whether it's this year or whether it's next year. It's still going to be a savings when you institute this HSA program and see how the claims are received.
Jonathan, I think we just ought to move forward and just go ahead and have you check with the other municipalities regarding the vision, the dental, those coverages like that. And then we can just make a decision from there, just to see how they pay them, or if they pay them or not.
So is it the consensus of the board to seed the HSA with $500 and then $250 for the wellness initiatives, and then for us to check with the other cities on the dental, life, AD&D, long-term disability, and then bring back what our comparable agencies are doing
Yes,
for consideration?
By when?
yes.
Whatever the pleasure of the board.
Tomorrow?
Start
Next
using the
budget
phone
meeting?
now.
We
Next
can,
budget meeting?
we can possibly, I think we can get it to the board either the workshop on the 31st or your first meeting in August.
Okay.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I'll get with Karen.
Good.
She disappeared.
I agree.
Okay.
She's already starting to make those calls.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right. All right, well, thank you
Okay.
guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the compensation and classification study.
Yes. Our finance director and our HR coordinator have done some work with regards to looking at our comparable cities and our peer agencies to look at what is a palatable compensation proposal for the board to consider. In past conversations, the board has asked the question of staff, how many staff have current performance evaluations. And when I had the discussion with HR, that about 90 to 95% of your employees have current employment evaluations and have been receiving employment evaluations on an annual basis. The other percentage that's outstanding is those new employees that effectively are new to the organization and have not reached their probationary period. In the survey that we conducted, we looked at some of the peer agencies, and I think Director Pierce, you may have that information, or Karen may have that information as far as the peer cities we looked at on the compensation. And if we can grab that from her and we can put it up for the board's edification, we can get into that. But on an aggregate, we saw that the increase that is being offered to most of the employees along our coastline is around 3.75%. So when we looked at having the discussion with the board, we said, okay, the cost of living, or the CPI, is about 2.1%. Would the board be amenable to a 2%, an additional, or 1.9%, to get to a total of 4% for the employees for this fiscal year? We have effectively been able to go through the budget and identify some savings whereby the money would be able to be absorbed without effectively increasing any fees or any cost to our enterprise funds or to the residents. So our recommendation from a compensation perspective is to recommend that the board allow for staff to proceed forward for budgetary purposes with a 4% increase. One of the things that we are putting in place is a merit system that will be rolled out in fiscal year 2019, as well as a bonus structure. I can tell you that right now we don't have a merit-based compensation strategy. That's something that we need to develop, and we need to work with department directors and managers to understand how that structure comes into play. In future wage conversations, it's staff's hopes to be able to say that here is the basic cost of living increase, and then you have an opportunity to get additional X percentage based on factual information as to how the employee performs within their respective duties. So when we create that matrix, it will be based on a percentage system. So we may say 10% of your evaluation is punctuality, 30% is job performance, and these are the specific things. And then, you know, the remaining percentage could be a variety of categories. By doing that, the department director or the manager will put that information in there. It will kick out a total score and then provide for what the range of the percentage increase will be. The department director will ultimately sign off on it. It will go to HR for review, and then ultimately for execution by the city manager. The reason that there would be so many steps in the process is that because it is a formula-based system, and we have to be conscientious of that. I've seen in the past whereby Jonathan's a good guy, I like him, he may not be performing to X, so I'm going to tweak this percentage and tweak this percentage and tweak this percentage to effectively get him to where he gets a 4% pay raise. So we're going to make sure that we document well, that there's no arbitrary percentage or credits given, and that it goes through a process where there's proof and documentation that this person effectively accomplished X, Y, and Z, and then they're entitled to an X percentage, whether it's on top of a cost of living or just a general pay increase. It will be paid for performance moving forward. Also, we're looking at an opportunity to create a bonus structure. For me personally, I'm more inclined to support a bonus structure because from a fiscal perspective, it doesn't add reoccurring expenditures to the budget. It's a one-time cash infusion, and it doesn't increase the personnel costs, and you don't have the compounding issues, because if you give somebody a 5% raise, you've given them a 5% salary raise, but you've also given a raise that they will receive in their deferred compensation as well. So when we look at the total cost of the employees, those are some things to consider. So staff over the next year will be bringing forward a plan for the board to look at as it relates to merit-based, performance-based compensation, coupled with an opportunity to have a bonus structure. So in the event that the board says, you know what, we are more inclined to offer a bonus structure because of some outliers in the economy and we see things happening, you have that option. The statute has changed where if you have a bonus structure, you have to make it afford it to all employees an opportunity to participate. So that is something that we want to look to put in place and also have it with some incentives to allow for employees that if they're doing a good job or they find savings in the organization, that there's an opportunity to reward our peak performers. So this year would be the last year that we are requesting an across-the-board compensation increase for all non-represented employees. We began having our conversation with our representative employees today, which is our fire union, and we're hoping to be able to bring the board some items to consider in subsequent meeting. We may even have to call a closed executive session to talk strategy with the board on where they feel compensation for our fire personnel is, but nonetheless, this is kind of where staff is requesting the board to consider allowing for us to move forward for the purposes of the budget process. Currently, the finance director has provided me information that the budget as it stands right now with the 4% increase is a balanced budget. So if there is any deviations from that, obviously, whether it's less or more, there's some modifications that would have to be made for the budget. But in the existing fund structure and what we have available, we're able to effectively afford that 4% increase.
And that is correct. The information I just passed out to you, which is a summary statement of the general fund, basically includes the cost reduction in the medical that we just heard. And with that, when you put the 4% in for the employees, pretty much there's an overage of a little over 16,000. And I was looking at maybe that 16,000 as the possible seed money and putting in the HSA. Additionally, we're looking at having a transfer from the building fund to the general fund to cover some of the building code requirements that will reduct or compensate against the law enforcement contract.
And what is the transfer, Walt?
That exact amount would be $89,400. So with the 16,000 plus the 89, you're looking at an overage right now of 106,000 between the revenues and expenditures. There is some areas that we need to push some money toward. I think, and a good example would be in legal. I think that that's under budgeted. I would feel comfortable putting more money. If we have to use the land use attorney next year, and if we have other cases that I would just feel a little bit comfortable putting at least 20,000 more into legal. But that is something that the board can decide later on.
And to the finance director's point, one of the things that as we were going through the budget process that we identified is that the general fund has been effectively subsidizing the building fund to provide for code compliance issues applicable to the Florida Building Code. So what our hope is to take that monies to offset what the general fund has been paying for those services. Also, I'm going to be asking our city attorney, if I have documentation and proof that effectively we've been doing this for X amount of years, since the building fund is a healthy fund, can the money be returned back to the general fund? And so that's a conversation that I'm going to have with the city attorney with respect to, there's some statutory requirements, but if we can provide proof that effectively this happened, can we make the appropriate transfer to make the general fund whole for the costs that have been incurred associated with enforcing the Florida Building Code? So Right now, as it stands, there is an overage in the budget, and there is an additional opportunity for an additional overage, and we have a representative here from Enterprise Fleet Management Solutions to kind of talk about another opportunity, but that will be closer in the CIP. But so we are finding those places where there's some savings and some efficiencies to effectively pay for the increases that we're recommending for the board to consider.
Jonathan, I have a question. You indicated that it'd be a 4% increase across the board for all employees. And then you said the merit would be based on job performances next year.
Correct.
Okay. When you talk about the bonus, and I said, you said it's in the process of being structured. Well, what exactly would the qualify for bonus? Going to school, improving something in their job? Or?
It would be similar to that of your performance evaluation. So effectively, if Jonathan scores, there's these criteria, and if Jonathan scores an 80%, then he's entitled to a 1.5% increase or 1.5% bonus on his salary. Mm-hmm. So you have that mechanism in place. So it gives the board two options. It gives the board an option to say, okay, we're okay with the merit-based performance system, but in the event that we see some issues with the economy and you still want to effectively reward your employees, you have that bonus structure that you can utilize in lieu of that 3 or 4% pay raise or 2% pay raise. So it's just another tool in the toolbox. Also, we're looking at an opportunity. I think the city of Clearwater, if I'm not mistaken, has a program whereby if employees find efficiencies and find savings or those kind of things and it's quantified and qualified by the finance department and it is real savings, that they're entitled to or eligible to receive a percentage based on the savings. So we want to put some things in place that if an employee says, you know what, instead of utilizing this motor on this engine or on this vehicle or something, and we go to this, that we can save $20,000 or $30,000, and is there an opportunity to give the employee 1% of what that savings would be to incentivize employees to really look at their operation or what they're doing from the perspective of an entrepreneur. If you were a businessman or a businesswoman, how would you address that situation? So those are the kind of structures that we're looking to put in place to really provide more opportunities for employees and more opportunities for the board as to which direction that they want to go on long-term compensation strategies.
All right, thank you.
From a time standpoint, I just want to make a comment that we do want to move forward a little bit because we're looking at the 31st and providing the commission with the proposed budget book. And also at that time, we have to make the decision officially that we're not increasing the millage. And that meets a statute requirement that is actually due on or by August 3rd, that we have to notify the property appraiser that we're not doing that. That has to be an official vote. So it would be good if we could do that on the 31st and also have the proposed budget book completed at that time. Then between the proposed budget book and the tentative, which would be due in September, or you would get it at the end of August, you would still be able to make changes.
Okay. I have to leave, and I'm going to pass the gavel to the vice mayor. And I recommend that we take a 5-minute break. I think some people need to use the restroom. And before I go, I just want to comment on 2 items that are going to be later on the agenda, and one is the fleet management. I'm sorry, I'm going to miss that presentation, but in the memo, it talked about 5 vehicles that we're going to be needing, but in the budget, I only saw 4. So I was concerned about that, and I'm also concerned about why we're replacing vehicles only 12 years old. So I just want to make that comment. And then on the last item about the clerk's compensation, that was not part of the 6-month evaluation. That was simply an evaluation of probationary period. And while the clerk did get excellent reviews, and I thank you very much. You're doing a great job. I don't recommend that we give her a raise at this point, that she would get a raise with everyone else when time comes. Okay.
All right.
So we're now 5-minute break.
Any more paperwork?
they have a deadline, and that deadline, I think, was last Friday or maybe yesterday. So we need to at least give them direction. I know we don't take a vote or anything, but we need to give them direction as to what we are considering.
We have, with the health insurance plans, we've already solidified that. Now it's specifically those items that we just previously discussed, the dental, the AD&D, and long-term disability, that effectively open enrollment, and I just got information from the HR coordinator, is August 17th, so the time frame is upon us. And so back to the previous conversation, we can bring the data and information to the board, but certainly based on the information I've just been provided, we need to get some clarity from the board as to where they stand, whether it's bring the data back and look to institute this as part of fiscal year 2020 budget, if it's the pleasure of the board, or effectively if the board wants to, pass those costs on to the employees. We need to know today to be able to do that.
Back before August 17th or whatever. The other thing I'd like for you to add that.
well-
Sorry, Nancy, sorry, that's not the insurance, I mean, it is the broker, the carrier whose responsibility
The carrier,
is.
yeah. So August 17th is the open enrollment, whereby we're communicating to the employees exactly what the benefit structure looks like. And then from now till then, they're going to be providing the literature, running all the data, having all the information available for the employees. So we need, if we are going to deviate from that, we need direction from the board if they would like to move in that space where the employees will incur the cost for the items that I previously communicated.
I think, once again, we're getting information late, so it's hard for us to make an intelligent decision at this point. We almost have to stay with what we have because of that, because of the deadline. But once again, why aren't we getting information earlier? When we talked about insurance, that should have been insurance, not just health, but we should have gotten information on all the insurances that we're paying. Not just one little piece of the pie. And I disagree. I think it's too late this year to do anything. But I think the city needs to be more proactive, like when we ask for something like the insurance, that they say, oh, they're talking health insurance. No, they should have been looking at all the different insurances. It's my personal opinion.
Well, and we did look at, bang for our buck is really in the health insurance plan. We did also meet with another broker and another insurance entity to effectively look to switch our plan in its entirety, but we had never thought that those small ancillary coverages that are very customary in the sector in the public sector would be things that the board would look at, because of most of those are situations whereby are funded, and the real bang for your buck is in that health insurance plan versus that. Now, in the perfect world, obviously we'd want to look at the entire benefit structure and those components, but we were looking to make sizable modification on things that in perpetuity can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars versus something that can save you $17,000. So, and we have some proposals. We've just showed you that we've saved potentially $84,000 just by looking at the contract with the Sheriff's Department on that. You'll hear a presentation today that effectively can save you $100,000 plus in the way in which we manage our fleet. So we're looking at what's going to render the largest savings to the organization. But if we diminish the employees' benefits packages and those packages that they receive, there is going to be an impact to morale. And I'm really concerned that if we start digging into those things, there is some unintended consequences for that. And I can tell you, if you were to have a conversation with our brokers and others in the field, that they would caution you on making those incremental changes on those small benefits. you're better off making a concerted effort on the larger cost centers for the organization. But it ultimately is the pleasure of the board, how they wish to proceed. In the perfect world, yeah, I would have loved to be able to spend some time looking at comparables throughout, but, you know, we're in a shortened time frame.
Like I said, I think at this point it's too late to kind of change everything. If everything had to be in by last Friday, from what Walt said, you know, so we really don't have a lot of options here at this
Well, and and just to be clear, PRM gave us actually more time because they knew they were coming here today to give us a presentation, and that's really where the emphasis was given. They delayed that deadline basically because they knew that we wanted to get a change of plans to take advantage of some cost savings. They did a lot of work to make this happen today.
I think this is a little
We did
bit,
too, actually.
little bit misleading, in fact, it just says insurance out here, you know, Bel Air Bluffs pays 100%. Every city has a plan that pays 100% of a health share, or of a health care plan, but it could be a really bad plan. Like Clearwater gives you a really bad plan, but you can go up it with everything that Aflac has to offer. But you're paying for all those things outside of there. If you want vision, you're paying. If you want dental, you're paying. If you want disability, you're paying. If you want cancer, if you want whatever, it's all on you. But, you know, this is just saying these certain people pay 100% of the plans. And some of them don't even pay 100%. I thought it was a requirement. Is that not true?
No, you don't have to pay 100%. You have to offer health insurance, but you don't have to pay 100%.
So this was just handed out during the break of municipalities, but, so we need to know from these municipalities, are they actually paying dental long-term? That's the question that I'd like to know, and I'd also like to know if they're paying 100% of their retirement. So if you could just add another column onto that when you all do this review. But I kind of agree with John, I don't think there's anything we do this year if the deadline's already been made. But if we can get that information to make a better decision next year based on those facts, then.
I agree with Nancy and John. I think that we got into the crunch and didn't get all of the, I guess, our proposed or questions answered that we had intended to, but I certainly wouldn't want to, I thought I was probably wrong in looking at this, that a lot of the cities probably do offer 100% for a basic plan, but I don't know that, okay? So I will concede with the city manager and.
Well, and one of the things that we can go, when we go back to the insurance plan, remember, it's predicated on claims versus premium ratio and what their renewal rate is. So they can pay 100% of a plan and be a substandard plan, but still pay $1,000 because they have over plan utilization. So there's so many different factors to consider, because Madeira Beach's experience versus City of Clearwater experience, if they're running 60% claims to premium ratio and they have 2,000 lives in the plan, ultimately that's going to effectively change what their renewal rate. So having an apples to apples to apples comparison is very difficult, because we have to literally break down plan design. We have to look at their claims to premium ratio. There's a whole bunch of factors that involve, but pretty consistently, we can survey the cities and find out what their cost per employee per premium is, and then do they pay 100% for individual coverage? We can find that. But then when we look at the entire ball of wax here, you can have situations where, you know, an employee that works sanitation and Safety Harbor can be making $3 or $4 more than our employee and have a better health insurance plan or a different health insurance plan. So there's other factors, but it's staff's recommendation, and we've had the conversation about the opportunity to do an overall full-fledged compensation study to look at the entire gamut of what our peers are paying, and then I call it the hidden paycheck. If it costs $25,000 to employ employee X, but it cost us $65,000 to employ that employee with all the ancillary benefits, that's something that we should be able to see. And so those are things that we're constantly trying to work on and getting that information, but it's only as accessible as some of our peers allow for it to be. So we're collecting this information, and we'll ultimately end up bringing it back to the board.
I agree with you, but this sheet, it's got 15 cities on it. There's only 4 that are even remotely close to the size of our city, out of the 15. I mean, we don't compare to Gulfport, Largo, Safety Harbor, Seminole. So, I mean, this,
But on
you know, I'm looking at Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach, you know, Bel Air,
Reddington.
Reddington's.
And the other thing is that in a compensation strategy and a compensation analysis, I've done multiple compensation studies. And what they do is they look at, from an arm's length transaction, how far conceivably will an employee drive to be gainfully employed. In the most densely populated, county in the state of Florida, it's nothing for an employee to drive from Seminole to work in Madeira Beach, or St. Pete to work in Madeira Beach or Clearwater. So we have to look at that information. It's not necessarily comparable apples to apples, but we have to look at who our competitors are and understand that, yes, our general fund budget and those types of things have to be taken into account, but you will effectively lose those employees to those employers. So you have to be conscientious of what everyone else around you is doing, because we're all in the same field. A solid waste worker here is similar to a solid waste worker in Clearwater, and how far will that employee drive for that gainful employment opportunity? So when we look at the benefit structure, we have to look at what everybody else is doing and say what is, a good number or a good position for us to be. We don't want to be the training ground for Pinellas County, but we don't also want to diminish our benefits to where we can't recruit and retain folks. So it's a bunch of different factors that we have to look at.
Okay, so you will add the retirement to that list?
We will add retirement, and then we will actually add the cost that the city pays for insurance per agency. So what we'll do is, if Clearwater pays 100%, we're going to find out what that cost is that they pay per individual per month for employee-only coverage. So we'll
It
be
should
able
be
to
a
see
good time
that.
to be doing it, since everybody's going to be going through the same exercise of open enrollment.
Yep.
Okay, well, I
Okay,
think.
thank you.
Okay. Any more comments on that? I think that we've
Yeah, we beat that
agreed,
one.
we'll just pass it around.
Yeah, I just
But
don't
the
feel like we should-
consensus, pardon?
I suppose.
Oh, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
just feel like we shouldn't be nickel and diming every little thing like this, because this can make it or break it for an employee, especially if they have a family. As far as the life insurance goes, I know most places give you, what about 25,000? They give it to you up front. Maybe not 25, might be less than that. And then if you want more than that, then you pay. And as far as the retirement goes, that could vary between each employee differently, because they're all here at different times and the length of time they're here. But as far as the vision and dental and everything, that's nickel and dime stuff. And we shouldn't be spending so much time nickel and diming two little things like this. It's not that important. I think the employees deserve it. That's part of their package. We did a good job on the healthcare part of it, and I think we should continue with the vision and the dental, because it's not that much.
Okay, and I think that was the consensus of all of us, is to inform RPM that the city.
Again, the vision, the employees pay the vision.
That's correct.
City
Employees
does
do
not
the vision.
pay for the vision.
But the city does pay for the dental, the
Yes.
life, and the long-term
Yes,
disability.
and
Okay.
hopefully it's the direction of the commission to proceed so that we can notify PRM that we would like those plans and the city paid plans.
Right, so can we pass that down, Nancy?
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
fine.
And Nancy?
What?
To inform PRM that we have accepted the plan. You go ahead, because you said it better than I did, Walt.
Except the plan the
That
three
they
plans
presented,
that they presented
exactly.
today,
Right,
and the other employee paid benefits that they provide.
okay. And that's
can't
just what we
vote,
had
but
our
we just need
consensus
direction.
on when you and John made the comments that, wait a minute, we're really going to leave
I
it like
got
it
it,
is
I got
this year, and then we're going to go on with it. So is that still acceptable to?
We already said that twice.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead and do your thing, Walt. And I think that's all we need for this subject, right?
Okay, yes. We kind of want to skip around. We do have Enterprise Fleet Management here, Jeffrey Hubbaugh, and he was good enough to come here today. Staff met with him and his team about a week ago, and we were impressed what we heard. And this has been a initiative of the city managers.
Madam Vice Mayor and board members, we did have the conversation like the finance director communicated, and obviously when you're talking about fleet and fleet maintenance and in conversations I've had with you, both publicly and privately, there's been some discussions on to how do we better track, maintain, and account for our fleet and do it in a fashion that allows for us to modernize our fleet, but also make sure that we are getting optimal use out of it, and we don't have vehicles that remain in the fleet that are at the end of their useful life. And so there's no better company than an enterprise that is in the fleet business and understands how and when to sell vehicles. And so everything conventionally that you have to, that you think of as it relates to fleet management and entering into a lease, they're going to provide some information that's going to take away a lot of the risk that, you know, the regular person that is leasing a vehicle is exposed to. And we believe that this is a good solution for the board to consider. They're on the state contract, and the finance director can correct me if I'm wrong. We have actually postponed the acquisition of some vehicles this fiscal year because we believe that this is a solution that effectively can provide a lot of savings for the city and some opportunities to modernize our equipment fairly quickly and get it specialized as well. They basically do everything except for public safety fire apparatus vehicles, but your traditional Ford Explorers, those types of things, they offer that. So.
What about all the other things on here, like the school bus and plow truck and all those types of?
There's specialized equipments that they're able to do, and so I would defer to the representative
That's right. We'll
to share with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all and on a subject a little bit less complicated than healthcare and employee benefits.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Yes, ma'am.
Or you,
Is
oh,
that better?
good, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for the intro, Jonathan. So Enterprise Fleet Management is a division of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So I'll give you kind of the broad overview, and then I'll dial into some of the specifics of what vehicles we can work on and what we can't. And then I'll also talk about what it looks like to partner with a company like Enterprise and how we work with our clients year over year to provide them with fleet analysis and consultation. So at a high level, Enterprise Holdings has National Rent-A-Car, Alamo Rent-A-Car, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and Fleet Management is another division of the company that falls under that Enterprise Holdings organization. The division that I represent works with for-profit and nonprofit and government entities to help them reduce the cost of operating their fleet of vehicles, improve the controls that they have in place to monitor and manage that fleet, and also leverage an outsourced expert in the industry that's really dedicated to being 100% a great fleet manager. Obviously, everybody in this room wears a lot of hats. Waking up to be the greatest fleet managed in the country is not the top priority, but it is an important factor that's impacting the city, and also obviously from an expense standpoint, if there's room for improvement there, that's worth exploring. Enterprise Rent-A-Car's model, and I'll sort of lean on the Rent-A-Car division to sort of paint this picture for you. We've got just under 2 million vehicles under the companies that I referenced earlier, you know, National, Alamo, Enterprise, and ultimately we've probably made more mistakes than anybody could ever imagine as it relates to managing that fleet of 2 million vehicles. But with those mistakes, we learn from that experience and from that process. And you typically would see at a rental location, you know, most vehicles really don't exceed more than a year and a half in service. And if we could run those same vehicles for 2 years and maximize our profitability and have a more efficient operation as a result, we would absolutely do that. But generally speaking, on average, you don't see that. We're typically getting out of vehicles after about a year and a half, sometimes sooner. So we do that because Enterprise is leveraging our own buying power of a 2 million vehicle fleet. We're acquiring vehicles for less than what the retail public would purchase them for. We rent them, which is really just a way to create career opportunities for people to stay busy and keep our vehicles in service for a defined period of time. and then we sell them for sometimes more than what we've purchased them for. So a good portion of enterprise rent-a-car's profitability comes from the actual replacement, selling the vehicle at the right time and getting into a new vehicle at the right time. If you think about that, really we're only doing a handful of oil changes. We're probably not putting tires on a vehicle. It's only been in service for a year to a year and a half. We're really maximizing the efficiency of that asset while it's in service. And we're also capturing the most fuel-efficient vehicles that are in the market. That's obviously, there's been a lot of changes in the technology of vehicles that have impacted fuel economy. So we're refreshing our fleet annually to take advantage of those changes. So how this filters over to government entities, and this is differentiating from your traditional commercial for-profit business. Government is really looked at as having one fleet. So across the United States, we've got like 15 million vehicles that fall into this government scope. So when the manufacturers look at that as an opportunity, they're providing rebates, and you see this on FSA and state contract. You know, sometimes you can get $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 lower purchase price than what the retail market would pay for the same exact vehicle. So what we help government entities do is leverage that purchasing power by reducing the amount of time that the vehicle stays in the fleet so that you can capture what is traditionally very strong resale value before you start experiencing the impact of increasing maintenance costs. Obviously, want to reduce your fuel spend by taking advantage of more fuel-efficient, newer vehicles, and so forth. So we're really taking the enterprise rent-a-car model and saying, okay, it may not be a year or a year and a half for a government vehicle to be in service, but it may also, it probably isn't 12 years or 14 years. What is the right life cycle for your industry and your vehicle types? And we typically find that 5 years is a good benchmark to work from. One of the things that I brought an example of, and I'll give you the overview of it and then let you look at it. It's basically a 10-year model, a 10-year analysis to say, over the course of a 5-year period of time, if we were to refresh all of your vehicles with new delivered vehicles, well, your first 5 years, there's going to be some variables with what are you getting rid of, how old was it, what is it worth, things like that. Once you get into the second 5 years, you've now got a sustainable plan, meaning we can project out for that second 5 years, and you've now got year over year the same recurring costs. Essentially, you're selling 4 or 5 old ones and bringing in 4 or 5 new ones, keeping a pretty cost neutral status quo at that point. So I brought an example of that, and I'll take 2 or 3 minutes just to walk through it with you in just a moment. But I want to also address the term lease, because Jonathan brought that up. I appreciate you mentioning that, because I sometimes forget to address that as a concern. We use primarily open-ended leases as our funding mechanism to the government entities that we work with, and also to the commercial and for-profit organizations. And the way that works is, if you think of it like a $20,000 vehicle, and you're going to finance it over a 4-year period of time, right? You're financing it, paying it off over 4 years. Imagine for a moment that you lowered the amount of principal that you're paying each month, sort of building a reserve. Some people could call it a balloon, whatever term you want to use for it, so that at the end of the 4-year finance, you've got a residual balance of principal that you hadn't paid. The idea behind that is, can you do that and really only pay for the use of the vehicle? Pay down the principal to a point where you're still in a strong equity position. It's not as though you're upside down and owe more than the vehicle's worth, but how can you reduce your cash flow so that you're paying only for really the lost value of that vehicle over that 4-year period of time? So I mentioned the replacement plan and the analysis, so I'll give you a quick example of that.
Just give them all to her, she'll pass.
So in this particular example, this municipality had 107 vehicles in their fleet. And the first thing that we did, the page that I will ask that you begin with, is on the top left, it says Fleet Profile. So once you receive the document, the top left says fleet profile in a green bar. Just below that fleet profile green bar, it shows the breakdown of the fleet. What is it made up of? Sedans, 3/4 ton trucks, cargo vans. We can really provide any vehicle under 26,000 GVW. So that, to answer that question from earlier. So in this case, you can also see that we're breaking down not only the type of vehicle, but the average age of each vehicle in each vehicle class, as well as the average annual miles. Right now, this fleet profile page, we're establishing some benchmarks. We're trying to wrap our head around the fleet and determine what are their, on average, year over year. Of course, their budget varies, but on average, what does it typically fall around? So in this particular case, with a vehicle average age of 7 years, with 107 vehicles, that's about 12 vehicles per year that they were replacing historically. As you continue to the right, you can see that we're showing the replacement schedule, which shows 2018, 19, 2020, and the number of vehicles from each class that are targeted to be replaced in those model years. So in this example, the first year is the largest year, with 60 of their 107 vehicles being replaced. As you can see, the subsequent years, it does reduce. Not uncommon with many of the government entities that I meet with, we do see that their average age of their fleet is pretty high. So in this case, they've got 45 vehicles that were either 10 years or older, which is, you know, a pretty substantial chunk of their fleet. We also collected some data from this account. We determined what their total maintenance spend was. So for that 107 vehicles, if you flip the page, this is where you get into the analysis portion. Their current maintenance spend was $91 per vehicle per month. Their annual average odometer was about 14,000 miles a year. That's high. We usually don't see many government entities with that high of an average annual odometer. We excluded insurance for the purpose of the analysis because they're going to have auto, whether they keep vehicles 8 years or 5 years, they're still going to have their auto policy. So we took that out of play. We also took in consideration what their fuel spend was and what their average fuel economy, which was right around 13 miles per gallon. And that's a factor of the makeup of their fleet from the previous fleet profile page. And our recommendation, again, on a 10-year model, we can show full implementation at year 6 through year 10. So over the course of 5 years, on a 5-year replacement plan, we're guaranteeing and fixing their maintenance cost at $49, which is about half of what they were spending previously. And we plugged in $2 as the average cost per gallon. That's obviously increased over the last couple of years here. So the idea of all these factors really feeds into that yellow line that's cutting across the page. I mentioned we're trying to define, on average, you know, looking at their entire fleet, their maintenance, their fuel spend, how many vehicles they purchase per year, how many vehicles they get rid of per year, what is their average budget for their fleet? So again, that 107 vehicle fleet, based on their average hold, means they replace about 12 vehicles per year. Their purchase budget for those 12 vehicles was approximately $293,000. They have no current lease expense, and they have about $117,000 in their existing maintenance spend and $237,000 in fuel spend. That puts the total fleet budget on average that this city experiences right around $648,000. The years following that, it shows the 10-year implementation process. So the first year, you can see that instead of purchasing with cash their 12 vehicles, they're actually replacing 60 vehicles in their fleet, and they're spending actually a bit less in capital outlay, $288,000 with 60 new vehicles compared to $293,000 for only 12. Their maintenance is cut dramatically as a result of bringing in the new vehicles to the fleet, and their fuel cost also reduces as well. The total fleet budget after the first year of implementation dropped significantly, about $66,000 in reduced fleet budget. And you can see how that rolls out year over year. So I keep circling back to the 10-year total summary because the second 5 years shows full implementation, which is a sustainable program. We're going to be within 1% or 2% of that next 5 years, year over year, without fail, excluding inflation, which of course will happen. What we also did not account for over the course of that 10 years, which saved about $700,000, was that there was 107 vehicles that this city was operating. So the equity from the sale, when those vehicles were disposed of, is accounted for under current fleet equity analysis right in the center of the page there. You can see that for each model year, the number of vehicles that were resold, in that first year there was 60. The average resale of $6,800, $408,000 in total resale equity from those vehicle turn-ins, which created, over the course of that 5-year implementation, there was an additional $1.7 million in value that they were able to extract from their existing assets. So that's not accounted for in the savings on the top part of the 10-year model. That equity is your equity. Down at the bottom there in the summary, that's where we take the 10-year model savings and add that to the equity savings. Really just getting a sum total, $2.4 million over the course of that 10 years. Some of the common questions that arise when we're talking about this type of model is, with a lease, many people are concerned about mileage fees or early termination penalties, damage penalties. None of those things exist under the open-ended equity lease. It's not designed to be restrictive in any way. It's in fact designed to be more flexible, and it will feel like a finance, but with the ability to change the amount of principal that you pay each month to better match your actual loss in value. If your vehicles only lose $8,000 over the course of 4 years, well, you can, strategically pay down only $10,000 of the principal and still have a $2,000 equity position on that vehicle, instead of, again, paying the full cost of the vehicle either day one or over the course of that term. It is. And we've got, some examples of existing success stories out there. City of Lake City is probably the most long-standing relationship in the state of Florida that I'm aware of. I want to say it's over 10 years now. So.
And certainly the fact that, you're not through, are you? Are you through?
I'd prefer to say yes and open it up to questions because I covered pretty much a lot of material there.
It sounded pretty amazing to me. It sounded like some kind of a dream story, but
Right.
but in the deep, down in the deep depth of it, I'm thinking that certainly because most municipal vehicles, or most of the type that you're talking about here, okay, have a low mileage, okay, and those other factors that you also brought into, makes it such an easy sell when you get ready to resell it, doesn't it? When we turn it in back to you, I mean, that's really where the bucks are.
And that's probably the number one reason why for enterprise rent-a-car in the rental world, it's a year and a half, because we're going to put 25,000 miles on it that year, But for you, you're probably only going to drive it 4,000 or 5,000 miles a year in some cases, maybe less, depending on the vehicle that we look at. So there's a tremendous amount of resale value there. And as I mentioned before, how we drive our profitability on the rent-a-car side is primarily through resale. Renting cars just keeps people employed. That's sort of our facility, and it meets our agreements with the manufacturers They have certain hold requirements. We must keep X vehicle in service for at least 12 months to get this purchase price. They don't want us competing with their dealers. So we've become really, really great at being used car salesmen, essentially, is what the company has done.
Right. Can I ask you one other thing?
Sure.
And then everybody else, I just happened to think of this. The lease payment program offers us the opportunity to customize certain things within those vehicles, like tracking certain things, tracking mileage, tracking fuel consumption and stuff like that.
GPS,
Sure.
Pardon?
like a GPS.
Yes.
I don't have, of course, but yeah, I'm just asking you to expand a little bit.
Of course, yeah. So all of the tracking of the asset to include your maintenance spend, if you already have a GPS program or if you need one, fuel expenses. We are also co-branded with Ride Express, which is the current fuel program that you're utilizing. So all of the data points that you'd be looking to gather and collect for your fleet can be housed under one facility, which is really part of the core of our model is to say, again, going back to, nobody woke up in your city this morning saying, let's be the greatest fleet in the country and manage it the best way we can. Those tools are all there for you in one, enterprise website that you can capture your data really anytime you want. So all of that is automated, and part of the long-term impact of that is as vehicles continue to change and become more complicated for repair purposes, you'll have a more sustainable plan for managing your maintenance long-term. You'll be leveraging the expertise of, again, a 2 million car fleet with our expert mechanics overseeing all the repairs that are done for your vehicles.
Okay, and what locations, what other municipalities close to us have you got the same arrangement with, or a similar arrangement with fleeting?
I jotted down a couple. I wouldn't know. HCC is pretty close. Hendry County Sheriff's Office, City of Deltona, City of Lauderdale Lakes. I think we have somewhere between 35 and 40 existing government clients in the state of Florida. And most of that has been over the course of the last few years. Enterprise didn't spend as much time, frankly, marketing to these types of opportunities, and we discovered that we can almost be even a better fit for government than we can be for anyone else. So that's been taking off.
Do you have anything in Pinellas County?
Yeah, I don't know offhand. We've got about probably 240 for-profit and commercial clients that are within the Gulf Coast of Florida.
So where would our closest locations be, for instance, for maintenance and stuff like that?
So we work with the local shops, and part of that is kind of keeping the business within the city itself. So you could either go to like a national partner, like a Napa or a Jiffy Lube or whoever may be closest from a proximity standpoint, or if you have more of a mom and pop type facility, as long as they've got the technology capabilities to be able to submit invoices through the electronic system, then they can be incorporated in the program as well.
Okay. Did you want to comment on anything, or did you just want the board to?
Yeah, just a couple of things, and that's one of the things that we looked at is the opportunity that they effectively negotiate and broker better arrangements when the vehicle goes into service with those national partners. So whereby Jonathan may take his vehicle to do X, Y, and Z, if we take a city vehicle that is in this arrangement, having the expertise of Enterprise, they know exactly what it should cost for this, and they negotiate the best price for us to decrease our maintenance costs. And then the other side, if we have local repair shops, to provide an opportunity for them to get into business with the city, and they benefit as a local business that pays taxes in our community to effectively help us maintain our fleet if they have the technology in place to effectively do that. So we saw it as an opportunity, plus with it would serve as an extension of our fleet management operations to where we can provide the board with real-time information, real data, what's happening with certain vehicles, and we can monetize the resale of those vehicles as opposed to keeping a vehicle for 13 or 14 years and then we go to sell it and we get, pennies on the dollar. But also one of the other things that we think this is a good relationship is that anyone that has a vehicle that, has some years to it, finding parts or finding a mechanic to effectively address those becomes increasingly more challenging as the vehicle gets older and as technology changes to now everything is done by computer and you literally have to hook the computer up to the vehicle to find out exactly what's going on. So this is an opportunity to really assist the policymakers in making informed public policy decisions on the fleet with the data that we certainly would want to have to better manage our fleet and our assets.
I know on a lease vehicle that you have to carry the higher limits of liability. How does that affect our insurance policy with the city that we have now?
As far as our insurance, we would have to check on what that would be. But, what have you guys seen in the market with respect to these types of arrangements with the insurance? Because effectively, we own the vehicle. It's just how it's managed is somewhat different.
Are you self-insuring for physical damage? Or is that through your standard carrier?
Yeah, that is
It's
through our
our
standard
standard, yeah.
carrier, but there
Okay.
is the regular deductibles
Yeah.
that go with that, so,
I would have to take a look at what your current policy coverage limits are,
Right.
and then just match that up with our agreement. I can tell you just from being experienced in the field, I haven't seen that be a challenge in the past, but certainly something we would confirm before we proceed.
Some
and
of them-
actually, when you personally rent a car, you basically use your own insurance for the most part too, or you have the option to do that.
Yeah, so you can either use your existing policy with the fleet management vehicles, or something that we can look at that wouldn't be at the onset, but in the future.
The plans that I've seen, you guys provide that, and we match it against our insurance policy to see which one is the best fit.
You sort of said it for me there, thank you. Yeah, we would provide a comparative rate to see if, are we a better fit for that particular program?
Do you supply gap insurance?
With our policy, and that's a good question, definitely nitty-gritty in the sense that there can be so many variances from one auto carrier to another with how they present their proposals. The way ours is set up is there's no gap required. It's just part of the program. So there's no, we don't actually even have gap language. It's just, we cover the asset at its value. Yeah.
Listening to you talk and reading this, basically you're saying a vehicle is for 5 years and then it goes back. Is that what you're saying?
For the purposes of modeling the cost analysis, 5 years is usually the right number to do that with. But when it comes to actual implementation of the program, we do see some variance in the recommendations year over year. But that's really where you guys will be challenging me and Enterprise, anybody that's affiliated with managing your account, to say, okay, here's this year's snapshot of our fleet. How have we tracked over the course of the last year? Is the projection you made 2 years ago still in line with today's market conditions? Or is there a better recommendation based on today's market conditions that may steer us to the left or to the right 5 degrees? So we will update you annually with what our best recommendation is based on that particular time.
Well, in this thing here, it says the staff anticipates payments of approximately $45,000 as part of the enterprise managed agreement to monitor and maintain the city fleet. What are we saying by maintaining the city fleet?
With respect to the maintenance agreement, like was stated, so what would happen is in the event that the vehicle is, as part of the arrangement, is sent off to service, they would assist in the maintenance and the management and tracking of, if we see that effectively we have a lemon in the fleet that we've taken to the shop X amount of times for these types of things, that's real data that they would provide to us to effectively say, okay, then we need to move in another direction. So by entering into this agreement, and correct me if I'm wrong, it really, for the first time, you have a real focus on a fleet management operation. Right now, we have a fleet manage and repair, but it's not to the tune where we're able to effectively be very proactive in some of the things that we need to look at long-term. How can we offset the cost? And we have a great mechanic on board right now, but eventually, at any particular time, if that mechanic was to leave, we have some concerns in the long term. So we need to be able to have the data and the information to provide to the board as to why we want to replace this vehicle, what is the cost that the city has incurred associated with maintenance, and managing the fleet, saying, okay, there's a lot of idle time on this vehicle, the fuel consumption issues, to really get into the nitty-gritty and the data versus us really trying to get our vehicles in and get them back on the road as fast as possible, because that's what we're trying to do to maintain a fleet that has vehicles, I think, from 97 to 2017. We're fortunate to have a mechanic that has that experience and that diversity and be able to handle those types of things. But we're looking as what's a long-term solution as to how we can maximize that asset that's depreciating and not spend so much capital to buy 5 vehicles or buy 4 vehicles and then look to do it again in a couple of years, where if we get comfortable with a lease payment, we can modernize our fleet, experience better fuel consumption, and get better tracking data than we currently sit. So
And that's correct. I mean, basically, the way our maintenance works now is we're not proactive. We basically deal with it when it breaks down.
Also, like the mayor said before she left, in here you're talking about 5 vehicles, but you're only budgeted for 4 this year. Where's the difference, number one? And number two, two-part question, I apologize. They go, the city can acquire 9 vehicles, thus allowing the city fleet to be modernized. What are we looking at? 5, 4, 9? What are we looking at?
Basically, we're seeing if the board is amenable to the concept of entering into an arrangement with Enterprise to assist in the fleet management. The vehicles that we have slated in the fiscal year 2019 capital improvements plans is 4 vehicles. We've got 2 vehicles, if I'm not mistaken, that are slated to be replaced this fiscal year. So we would look to incorporate that as part of the agreement. So it's probably looking at about a total of 6 vehicles. But we do have the opportunity to we wanted to look at our fleet holistically and say, okay, if it all affects our lease payment. So if we wanted to say we wanted to transition our fleet, our entire pieces of rolling stock, which I think we're around 18, you can do it in a 2-year period, or you can say, you know what, we're comfortable with the number in the CIP as it stands now and the 2 additional vehicles that we haven't purchased yet to be part of the arrangement, and then that would be our effective lease payment. And then we would get into what the replacement cycle would be for the additional vehicles that we do have in the fleet, and really work with Enterprise to say what's the optimal time to replace these and get our fleet up to par, because we do have a lot of situation. And to just, for clarification's sake, we are proactive in the maintenance of our fleet, but not to the degree that we would like to be, because one of the hardest things for local governments right now in the fleet management business is hiring competent and capable mechanics, and we're very fortunate to have one that can work from a fire truck to a lawnmower. And so he's managing so many pieces of rolling stock that if something goes down, we need to have him deploy his resources, his expertise to get that on. So we're doing some preventative maintenance. We're trying to keep the pieces of rolling stock, but this is just another asset to help us and allow our mechanic realistically to focus on some of the heavy equipment that your regular mechanic shops can't focus on, because having that fire truck up and operational is a key for our community. So I just wanted to state that on the record.
In the budget for 2019, we are showing 5 vehicles. There's a forklift that we're purchasing, and then there's a Packer truck for $310, which are $310,000, which we're going to move into 2020. So there is about 5 vehicles there.
I guess when I was looking at the vehicles, or listening to the mayor talk, we're talking, not the forklift, because I don't know if you guys do the forklifts and stuff like that.
We don't, no,
Yeah.
not
We're talking
today, but.
Vehicles, that's what we gotta look at. Well,
But again-
Vehicles, not the forklift.
Yeah,
and
but
that
again,
kind of thing.
as the city manager indicated, typically we wait till 7, maybe sometimes longer to do away with a vehicle. Some of these vehicles that are coming up for replacement for 2020, 2021, we can take a look at those, and instead of riding those out, we can sell those and have them replaced by lease vehicles. So we don't need to necessarily home in on 2019. We can look at other years ahead of time in the CIP budget.
And just for a point of clarity, what would happen is we would enter into an arrangement with Enterprise, and correct me if I'm wrong, they would do a comprehensive analysis of our complete fleet, and then they would provide a recommended replacement schedule. So even though we have vehicles slated in the CIP that we want to replace, they may say, Jonathan, based on the odometer, based on the maintenance records and all that, you've got something over here that you need to replace because you're losing more money on this than those other vehicles. And so you as a board would get an opportunity to make an informed decision based on data and information that would be compiled and really set out a fleet maintenance program to say, okay, this is how we're going to manage the fleet accordingly. So right now, we've got those dollars in there as plug numbers, but we would necessarily need to enter into an arrangement with Enterprise to do a comprehensive analysis, come back, and then say, we recommend you consider X, Y, and Z. And in our previous conversations with them, they understand that we have a finite amount of fiscal resources. They understand budgetarily where we would like to be. But if we come back and say, and just the round number was about $500 a month per vehicle. So if you say we have 4 vehicles and we're going to replace 4 or 5 or 6 vehicles, you're looking at the cost for that duration. But then on the backside, we're going to make sure that we experience the return on our investment when we go to surplus that vehicle. So without giving them the opportunity to do a comprehensive analysis, we're really just saying, based on the age of the fleet, these are some things that we need to replace without having that data to be able to provide it to you at this particular moment. And then, of course, fuel consumption. There's some big savings with taking some of the vehicles we have offline. We have probably some vehicles that get 10 miles to the gallon, where the newer vehicles are getting 23, 24, 26 in some cases.
I understand all that, and that was not my question. It was just how many are we looking at doing? I once before brought up, I'm totally in favor of doing leasing. I think it's really the way to go. But I'm just trying to figure out how many each year, how we're phasing into it. Are we looking at 5 a year, 10 a year? But you
Okay,
kinda
so
answered
over the next 3,
Wait a minute.
okay.
He kind of answered the question when he said they would kind of monitor or go back and do an analysis of our vehicle. That answered that question. That's what I was kind of asking.
Yeah.
Over the next 3 fiscal years, we have a potential of 15 vehicles.
Okay.
Just ballparking this.
Yeah, and each year, there will be adjustments and updated recommendations to that. A quick example is with the Hendry County Sheriff's Office. They're the most recent example of this. They're on, for their GMC Sierra 1500 trucks, a 6-month replacement plan. And in some cases, we're cutting them a check when they turn the vehicle in, meaning they've run those vehicles over the course of 6 months for free. It became a revenue generator in some cases. I don't intend to set an unreachable expectation with you here today, but I do want to let you know that we're giving you some big picture concept understandings of what we do. At implementation, there are going to be adjustments and recommendations that are going to create even more value. And I can't predict which manufacturer and what model it's going to be for the next model year, because they change their rebate structures every year. But we're going to look to find what is that right vehicle, the right life cycle, the right opportunity to, implement a strategy change that's going to net benefit for the city.
Thank you.
So right now, you're just looking to get our approval to go forward with this project. I agree.
I agree.
Yes, I think it's a good idea.
What about you, John? Yes? Well, I don't have my ears on. You do. Okay, so it's a general consensus
Yes,
to,
yes.
okay, the consensus to move forward with that. Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. All right.
Okay, the next item, do we want to go to D with the little 2, or do we want to go back up to the ICMA RC Retirement Corporation, which is something we had not?
Did we, I don't think we finalized the wage and discussion as far as the 4% discussion that we were having with the board. I think we kind of left it, and then the mayor had to depart, so.
Okay, where do you think we left it off from?
I think we left off the compensation and classification and the wage discussion.
Okay, because we did not have, we didn't have the presentation.
Right, I briefly introduced the item, and we have received some information that hopefully you have at this particular moment. It says FY 2019 proposed salary increases.
When would we have gotten that, Jonathan, just now?
Yeah, I think you may have received it now, or is this?
Oops, I got it over here, okay.
Okay.
Everybody got this, okay.
Okay,
This one.
so.
I've never seen that.
She brought it around.
This is the inquiry that staff made with regards to compensation throughout certain cities that we look to for what their compensation analysis. And a lot of cities are in the process of honing in and confirming where they are with respect to compensation. So it's staff's recommendation that the board consider to allow for us to have a 4% increase, which 2.1% is the Consumer Price Index, CPI, and the remaining balance would be a wage increase for the employees for a total of not to exceed 4%. In the budget document as presented and as drafted, there is available funds to effectively fund the raises, as well as provide for additional compensation for our collectively bargained agreements, whereby the fire department it has a step plan, so every year they get a 3% increase. And so we've included in that budget document for them to get the 1% increase on top of their 3%, consistent with what the other employees are being compensated. So we do have that in there, but obviously we're in the collective bargaining process with the labor union. And so once we get to a point where we have more information, we will be coming back to the board about what their compensation requests are and counter proposal and those things. We had a preliminary conversation today, but I think it would be premature to share what their compensation thoughts are, because we still need to work through some of those things and ultimately get to a point where we're comfortable presenting those options to the board. But based on the analysis conducted by Human Resources, holistically, it seems that a lot of agencies are at that 3.75%. Staff thought with the changes and modifications and some of the savings that were rendered by some of the proposals that you've seen today and in previous budget conversations, that we would like for the board to consider to allow for a 4% increase, like stated, 2.1% being Consumer Price Index, and the remaining balance be a wage increase for all employees. So we're seeking direction from the board as to how you would like to proceed. In subsequent years, we certainly want to put in place, or we will put in place, a merit-based system or paid for performance, and have that matrix and actually show the board how it works and make sure it's part of our personnel policy and our compensation strategy as we move forward. And then looking at a bonus structure as well to be able to accommodate some type of an employee incentive in the event that a merit-based system based on the economics won't work and we can have another alternative that's available to us. But we have to effectively create those plans.
You know, I think it's the third or fourth year in a row that the city has given 4%. Yeah. Well, at least 4 that I know of.
Yeah.
Okay? And last year, we asked for, you know, the evaluations, okay? You know, you're saying 90% are done or whatever. But right now, to me, it just looks like if somebody shows up for work, we hire somebody to show up for work, no matter what kind of job they do, good, bad, or indifferent, they're gonna get 4%. And I have heartburn with that, I really do.
Go ahead. I might have one.
Okay, that's right, you might. What do you think, Nancy?
I think we should do the 4% increase for all the employees. It's only fair.
Why is
I'd
it
stay
fair?
with that. 4%, they don't make that much money now, John. You'd be surprised. Some of the workers, they don't make a lot of money. 4% is a big thing for them.
I disagree with you.
That's okay.
Okay, well, that's
Got your
fine, that's what
right.
we're all here for. I might disagree with it and might not disagree with it, but I think that we're stuck this year because I feel that unfortunately, maybe administration had not complied with everything to where we have in place a system that we can say, we're going forth this year with 2.1% and base the rest of it on merit. But I do have full confidence that at this time, or way before this time, next year, Mr. Evans will have that in shape. And that's all I got to say about it. I'm not comfortable with it because I certainly didn't want to start off that way with it. I mean, it might be that it worked out more than that for all we know, but we haven't been really had the opportunity to just to see what everybody, you know, just to have evaluations or to have things presented to us.
When we get to the point of evaluation, Jonathan, you know, what I kind of vision is, okay, let's say Department X has got 5 employees or 25, whatever number, okay? And the department head for that goes down and says, oh, and let's say it's a scale of 1 to 10. Oh, a 10, a 10, a 10. You know, if everybody gets high marks, is that department head really doing their job? You know, what are we calling a fair evaluation? That's where I'm really kind of confused in the aspect of, you know, hey, I'm a department head, I want to be everybody's buddy, so I'm going to give everybody good grades, like you were kind of alluding to earlier, you know, the same type of thing. You know, so how do we control that, we, meaning you, as the city manager, control that everybody's not getting, you know, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 across the board, you know, because they showed up for work, they got a 10.
Right. One of the things that we're looking at is creating a matrix whereby we prioritize certain things in the evaluation form to where they're worth a certain percentage. So maybe punctuality is worth 10% and maybe job performance is worth 30% and safety is worth 5%. And so what effectively will happen is the department director would go ahead or the manager would put that information in. The department director would effectively review that. If it is the department director, they would put that information in. It would then be routed to HR. HR would look at it to see if there is supporting documentation that effectively says that, you know, Johnny did this and did a great job, and it kicks him up to receive whatever the maximum is. And then ultimately that information with HR's recommendation to proceed would come to the city manager. And I would ultimately sign off on all the wage increases. And that is something that I would look at to say, you know, in the perfect world, ideally, yes, we should want to have everybody exceed standards. But we also are going to put a mechanism that based on the score, it's automatically going to kick you into a personnel improvement plan, a PIP, and from that point, the employee would not receive the wage increase, and they have 6 months to cure the issue, or however many months to cure the issue, and then if not, then we'll be going in another direction. But that is why it's so important to provide the training and create the matrix that, as much as we possibly can, make it foolproof, But if I find a situation whereby department directors are, giving everybody tens across the board, that's a conversation I need to have with the department director. And I believe that this group understands the expectation is that we need to understand that this is a public record, that this is an opportunity to educate, inform, and coach your employees. And that, yeah, you're gonna invariably have some folks that are stellar, but you're also gonna have some folks that need some improvement, and being upfront with them to understand that no performance evaluation, in my opinion, should be a surprise. You should kind of know what the issues are going into that evaluation. So we're really gonna work on that matrix. We'll be able to show you that matrix and how it works and how it kicks out a score. And then from that point, then we'll adjust accordingly. But I'm relying on the department director as well as HR to catch those things and those anomalies, because if we get, a disciplinary action request on an employee to HR, and then we find out that 2 months later we get an evaluation for that same employee and it's not mentioned in their employee evaluation and they got to exceed standards, then we've got an issue. So we're going to try to put things in place to mitigate against those kind of things.
I think also, you brought up a very good point earlier, maybe we go with the CPI and then do a bonus on top of that, because then that makes more incentive for the employees. To me, that does at least,
Yeah.
And I kind of bring this up, and back to what I was saying earlier, the Army, being in the Army, working for the government, it was like, everybody got the same pay raise, so it didn't matter what kind of job you did. It didn't matter if you just sat out there on your duff all day and did absolutely nothing, or if you went out and was stellar. You still got the same pay raise as the person next to you. And that's kind of where my feelings are on that, that there's got to be some incentive for the person who's really doing a good job and going above and beyond.
So
But
is there a
let me give a
consensus?
caveat to that, but kind of like was said down there, maybe it's too late this year to do anything, so maybe we have to stick with the 4%. But, I think moving forward, we really need to be looking at these issues we're talking about.
I would say it would be too late to effectively put in a merit-based system, but it's not too late for the board to decide where they are, whether it's 2%, 3%, 4%. There is adequate time for that. We just need direction for the board to provide us, where you are with respect to that, so we can make the appropriate modifications and changes to the budget.
I think the 4%, that's my
It's been
opinion.
4% for 10 years.
I understand that, Nancy, I do, but I'm just saying, I think that's where we are this year. I
I'm with
do.
the 4% also.
I think we're with, I know we can shake our heads, but I think that we're with a lot of newness to our staff, and I think that I personally have the real faith that we're going to be able to, we've already made a lot of changes, I think. I think that we have made some very responsible changes, and I think that will continue. So I'm going with the 4%.
I'm glad you got faith, Debbie.
Pardon?
I'm glad you got faith.
Right, I do.
I'm glad.
So is there consensus of the board to move forward with the 4% as proposed by staff?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, yes. They already said yes. Thank you.
Silence is acceptance, that's how they rule it.
That's right.
All right.
Okay, so we're through with that item. Are we? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We handed out the.
And this truly is, I would just like to make the comment that this really, I've looked at it while we were talking too, and while it does make some pretty good statements, it's not anything like what I have received before. It doesn't tell the whole picture. It gives you some information, right? But it certainly doesn't tell us the
And
whole picture.
all this information they could get through public request, in every one of these cities.
Right.
I don't know why all these other columns in other cities are blank.
But we
Because.
really can't compare them with anything because we don't know the exact specifics of any of these, okay? When you look at the different positions,
And then you have experience in the particular
Right.
position, so those may be different factors, or you have a city manager or or a department director that's given a person an equity adjustment that you can't account for that. And plus, the other thing is that, yeah, it's public record, but how fast does somebody process that public record? Because there's some things where we may ask for it and we may not get it for 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how much things they've got going on. So, you know, there's a lot of other factors associated with it, but for the most part, we try to get as much much information as possible, and we share information. When entities ask us for information, we try to get it back to them within 48 to 72 hours on things like that, so they can see what our benefit structure looks like.
Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, if we've handed out the CIP, and we've made some revisions in this since the last time we talked about it briefly.
Well, before we.
Wait a minute. Are we through with this discussion? Through with this?
On the compensation, but I definitely would
Okay,
like to
excuse me,
hit
Walt.
the ICMARC.
Okay.
Can we do that one first?
Yeah, because
Okay.
that should be a pretty,
5-minute thing.
yeah, quick item. Well, if you can put that up, I know you had worked on a spreadsheet on the retirement. Currently, the city of Madeira Beach offers for general employees a defined contribution plan. The employee contributes, or the employer contributes 9%. The employee is not required to contribute anything as part of their retirement. When you
When are
look,
they gonna start?
and that's something that, from a policy perspective, we can look to roll out or consider. One of the things that we wanted the board to consider as part of a proposal, right now, it's cliff vesting. So what happens is, for instance, Jonathan comes in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. The city contributes 9% of salary into the defined contribution. If Jonathan fully vests at year 5, he's able to leave with the money that the city contributes. When we look at what are industry standards and what our other agencies are doing, and also looking at ways to incentivize and attract the next generation of the workforce, we looked at a tiered vesting schedule whereby that after 2 years of service, an employee, and that's the bottom chart, after 2 years of service, the employee would get 25% of what the city's contribution. After 3 years of service, 50%. After 4 years of service, 75%, and 5 years of service, receiving 100% of what is their vested account. Now, one of the things that we have said is that the city already contributes 9% into the retirement. And so when employees
It's not a
get,
handout.
when the city, when an employee serves 2 years or 3 years, and for whatever reason, life changes or they need to leave or they pursue an opportunity, we thought, okay, maybe we can make that decision a little bit more difficult for them if they say, okay, if I stay from year 2 to year 3, I get an additional 25% of what the city has contributed on my behalf. So having that system allows for the carrot. Plus, after 4 years of service, is it really fair to say to that particular employee, thank you for your service, we've contributed 9%, and for whatever reason or circumstance you chose to leave the organization, and you're going to forfeit the 9% that the city has contributed on your behalf for your retirement. So one of the things that we're asking for the board to consider is a plan modification that instead of us going to the cliff vesting, that we would have a tiered vesting, whether it's 25, 50, 75, or 100. Some agencies do 33%, 63%, and 100%, and they backload the amount in which an employee receives. But we did think that, considering we're trying to be competitive, we're trying to look at our benefit structure, and in my past experience, that cliff vesting is not very common anymore, and we believe that this is another incentive or opportunity to effectively attract and recruit that next generation of the workforce. Because the reality is, if you have somebody for 3 years, you're lucky. A 30-year government employee with one organization, they're tough to find. So how can we try to keep them at least to that 5-year mark? Because if it gets down to where I get 100% vested after 5 years, they're going to do the math and they're going to end up leaving at a year 2, year 3, and just take a higher wage and decide to walk away. If that happens, it goes into the forfeiture account that the city can utilize for offsetting benefits or enhancing benefits. Now, to Commissioner Oakley's point, in the event that the board wants to consider making modifications to the plan to call for an employee contribution, I would recommend that you do that effective for your new employees as they come into the organization, to say, we'll contribute 9% if you contribute 2 or 3%, to effectively share some skin in the game. Now, any contribution the employee makes, that is their money when they depart from the organization. The reason that I would not recommend us asking the employees to contribute now is that effectively if you gave them a 4% raise and you asked them for 3% into that, you've negated that raise. Plus, we know that there's some compensation, or there's some issues with regards to the rate of pay when we go out and we do a competitive analysis on our salary. I think we're going to find ourselves that we're under market in some positions and we may be over market in the other positions. But if you wanted to make that change, I would say you can make it for your new hires. In addition to based on the data we have, the organization transitions about every 6 to 7 years. So effectively, you would flip it over the next couple of years, where you would have employees that, for the most part, everyone in the plan would be contributing, and that's based on the data that we've received from the company. So we did want to see if there's an appetite from the board to make a modification to it. If not, the existing plan will stay as it currently is.
I don't like that part of it, that new part you brought in. I think when everybody vests, they vest in 5 years, and it is what it is. But I also think that the employees need to have a buy-in to their retirement, to have some contribution to their retirement. I mean, here again, it's just like the health insurance. We've given them everything for so long, and it's just not happening this day and age anymore, anywhere, to pay 100% of your retirement to anybody. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with matching what they want to put up at all, up to the 4.5%. Because if we match it, then it'd be at 9%, but they've got to buy into it.
And you're talking about existing employees, not just new employees.
Yeah, I'm talking about everybody. But they didn't have any buy-in to their health insurance. They have no buy-in to anything, it seems like.
You know, I think part of the reason of this is, and I've seen this work over this past year, and I shared this with with the city manager. When some people leave, particularly after 3.5, maybe 4 years, and believe me, I love this forfeiture. Patrick knows, I love this forfeiture account because it's just extra money that we have. Presently, we have $24,000 in there. That money goes back into the general fund. Where it's a little bit unfair is when somebody gives a good 3 years of their time, or 3.5, and they're close to that 5, and something happens, and I can think of a couple of instances in the past, they lose $35,000. So there is a little bit of unfairness when you look at it from that aspect.
Well, no, they get what they put into it. They get what they put into it.
As long as it's as long as it's contributory by them, right?
If they
That's what you're
contribute
saying. If it's
whatever they
non-contributory,
contribute,
right?
But not now, because they don't contribute anything.
Yeah, they don't get, right now, they don't contribute. But for instance, we had a discussion with, earlier today concerning our contributions to FRS for our fire personnel. They contribute 3%, but the city contributes 24%. So, you know, regardless of how we want to look at it, or, you know, you can have them put 3% in, but even if they serve 3 years with the organization and leave because of a family issue or just a better opportunity, they have in fact served your community for 3 years, and there should be some type of value that their service has been beyond compensation. And whether it's saying, okay, we're not going to do 25, 50, 75, and 100, maybe you look at 3 years. Maybe that's the threshold where you think somebody has put in enough sweat equity to say it's a value to us, and we're going to give you, 30 cents on the dollar for your time here with the organization. At least they leave with something, because I think we have a situation now where an employee is leaving us that may not be fully vested in the retirement, and they've been out in inclement weather. They've dealt with a lot of different challenges, and to say that just goes into the forfeiture front, I think that the plan that we have, and Director Pierce, correct me if I'm wrong, is not the common plan that's out there now.
No, and a lot of plans that we have heard, and our ICMA rep actually came and talked to us about this, at a minimum, most of the cities have where after you serve a year, you're 20% vested. I know in Indian Shores, after a year, I had 20% ICMA. That's like the minimum. But I think we were surprised as well to see that a lot of cities and municipalities around here had higher than the 20% after a year or two.
I think Clearwater or St. Pete, one of the two, is immediately vesting.
Right.
In the defined contribution. So
Not Clearwater.
there's a lot of other cities that have that offer that, whether you take this plan versus your traditional pension plan. But our rep did say one of the larger entities, it's immediately vesting. And I know that from my experience in the past, Largo is tiered vesting, and some other agencies are tiered vesting. So it's more common than cliff vesting. Usually you find cliff vesting when you're talking about public safety personnel, but those are usually in defined benefits plans versus defined contributions.
Clearwater's in a pension, and you vest in 10 years.
But I think they also offer now, the ICMA, and we can get that information because they provided it to us. I think they offer the retirement, whether the pension plan or the investment plan. Similar to that, even with FRS, the FRS investment plan, you vest in a year. And if you go into pension plan, you vest in 8 years.
Well, I do like the idea of the step planning instead of the cliff planning when you get to the top. But I too have concerns that it just doesn't seem enough to me, and I don't know when we have to figure this out, but maybe it's now. It just doesn't seem enough to me that the city makes the full contribution. It just seems like, even starting with a minimum percent on existing employees as well, okay? Not just with new employees, that there should be some kind of a minimum
Contribution.
Yeah. And I don't know what that percentage would be. I don't know. But I think that the city, in giving the 9%, is, I guess I'm just not really comfortable that,
And the board doesn't have to make a decision on this item today. We just, when we're looking at benefits and compensation and those types of things, we did want to show you that we're thinking about other benefits that we currently have in place. And we had the conversation, what's the industry standards on this? Because retirement is a big thing for folks. And we looked at what can we do to effectively provide for that carrot to maybe somebody says, you know what? If I stick it out for a couple more years, I can go from 25 to 75 versus I don't get anything for 100 until I hit 5 years of service. Invariably, they're going to leave. They're going to find the highest paying job, and they'll say, you know what, I'll make it up in salary, or I immediately vest at this organization. You know what, I'll give Walt the $15,000 and go about my business. And so what we're hoping to do is to tell the employees that, after, we value you from day one in the organization, and we value up to day, 5 years and on. But I really do believe that there is some value to some some step vesting versus the cliff vesting. Because we have people that leave for personal reasons, they leave for better opportunities, and it's pretty common that you have that situation where they leave with a portion of their retirement contribution.
And we have one person who just gave notice, she has to leave for personal reasons. It's not job-related or anything like that, so.
Well, I can live with this.
I can too.
I can live with it, but
Yeah.
I can't live with continually paying 100% of their retirement. I'm
Right, and I'm not comfortable with just the what do you call it, the pay-in, okay, by new employees. Because I don't want to wait 7 years until maybe that whole flow goes, changes, okay? I think there's got to be some buy-in, so when can we're not really
Well,
discussing that issue now.
The other thing that we were thinking about too is, and Patrick Cade brought this to my attention, is we did have a provision in the past where we did not contribute for the first year. In other words, the employee had to work the first year before the city contributed. Somewhere down the line, that changed. And we were thinking,
So that's a waiting period.
Yeah, it's a waiting period, so you could
So you
effectively
could
say.
effectively make a 2-year waiting period. if you
Exactly,
wanted to.
and say that, okay, this city's not, and then you can immediately vest, or however we structure the plan. But there is options out there, and so what we can do is, working with our representatives from ICMARC, we can bring them in and say, hey, pull all the plans for local government entities, and we want to look at an apples-to-apples comparison and provide the board with some more information. And then we can also query the other communities to say, when do they immediately vest? Is there a contribution that's required by the employee and the city matches up to or goes to this if they contribute X? So we can definitely look at that, but we wanted to look at this and kind of see what the board's thoughts are and kind of get some direction as to how we would like
I
to
think we
proceed.
put this on the back burner until we get more information.
Yeah.
Well,
And
but
also,
you
I think
want
the mayor
to,
needs to be involved in this.
but the point is, I guess, do you want to continue, do we want to proceed with this or just
No,
wait
hold?
till we
let's
get more
wait.
information
More information, number
from the
one.
other
Number two,
cities
we
and what
need
they're doing.
Maggie needs to be
Yeah.
in on this.
Okay,
So we just put everything on the back
Okay.
burner until that point.
Since we've
Okay,
already
that's
been
what
here
we'll do
for
with
4
that.
hours almost, I was thinking, why can't we put that and the additional budgetary items, which is the CIP stuff, all that on? Let's just have another meeting next week sometime on the budget. I mean, we've been putting this is gonna be hugely long, the
yeah,
CIP thing.
but we're facing some time elements here to get the CIP,
If
some of this direction for this.
Well, next week
Well,
isn't gonna be
okay.
that bad, I don't think.
okay, can you pick out anything?
If we go next week with this, it's gonna push just so you know, it's gonna push the proposed budget book, not that it may be a big deal, but it's gonna push it back another week. So instead of the 31st, it'll probably be the
Well, if
first.
you wanna go down that list right
No,
now, I
wait a
mean,
minute.
I can tell you where I'm chopping.
Well, instead of doing that, why don't we, is it possible to have another budget workshop this week, like Friday? Is everybody available Friday?
No.
No?
we can, if it's the pleasure of the board, we can look to schedule something, next week, Wednesday. And we've gotten good enough direction from the board on certain items, and these other items here, we can, this is probably 3 to 4 hours in itself, so if it's the pleasure of the board, the 25th work for everyone? Excuse me, Madam Clerk, I didn't hear what you said.
Wednesday?
Yes,
That's fine.
25th?
25th.
Okay, at 1 o'clock?
And, yeah, was 1 o'clock work good for everyone?
We got to get this through then,
Yep,
1 o'clock, right?
right?
okay.
1 o'clock, July 25th, and any emergency items now that we need to adjourn before we adjourn? No? Okay, I have one thing that I didn't do in the very beginning, okay? And I'm sure Clara will clarify me on it. Right, Clara? At the beginning of the reconvening of this workshop, you didn't call the roll because I didn't ask you to. Was I supposed to?
No,
Thank you very much.
just recessed and reconvened.
Okay, so we will, With no further,
Wait, I thought we were going, did you want to do the clerk, or you want to not do it? I was just saying take the CIP part out.
okay, well, we can
And,
do-
and the ICMA part out. So, but if, I mean, Maggie put her 2 cents in on the clerk, so.
okay, well, you want to then do the splash pad repairs too? No, you
that
want to
was
leave
the
that?
CIP.
Okay, you want to leave all that, okay, for next week, okay. All right, so let's go to E, city clerk's evaluation and compensation discussions.
Okay.
Okay.
Pursuant to the conversation that was had with the board, it was the board's desire to discuss the evaluation, the completed evaluation and compensation of the city clerk. Currently, staff has received some information pertaining to what comparables of clerks in other communities. And certainly, from our perspective, we grabbed as much information as we possibly can. And then one of the things that, of course, when you're looking at compensation, especially for your professional staff, is the credentials and the experience and all the other factors that go into that. So as the discussion ensued, staff wanted direction from the board as to how do you wish to address the compensation and based on the performance evaluation results for the city clerk. And so we needed some direction as to how you would like to proceed so we can budget for that or make any modifications or compensation proposals consistent with what the board's desires are with your clerk, who is a charter officer. So staff is just seeking direction from the board as to how you wish to proceed on this particular item.
Open?
Well, I think Claire's done a good job, but I think there is some room for improvement. But I agreed with the mayor too in the fact that just to let the 4% increase at the beginning of next year happen.
You know, I kind of think that Claire has done a great job. I've seen her in here on Saturdays and Sundays and late at night and stuff like that. I think she should be compensated accordingly. I think she's done a very, very good job. When we went out looking for a clerk, you know, we required the credentialing, which we haven't had for years and years and years. You know, Amy was not, Cheryl was not, the guy that was in here, I can't remember his name.
Ginger was. Ginger's before you came now.
Yeah, she way before I came, yeah. You know, so I think she should be compensated accordingly. Now, does that mean the 4% in October, or does that mean, you know, I don't have a good answer for it. I think she's put a ton of hours in on what she's done. Does this go back to like the 4% and a bonus thing like Jonathan was talking about? I don't have a good answer right now. You know, I just want to kind of hear what everybody else was coming from. I heard what Maggie wanted to do, but and I just heard Nancy, she wants to wait until October 1st to do the 4%. But let me hear from you two ladies.
Just because you're the one who also had brought this up the other day. Okay, that's fine. I don't mind doing it. Yes, I've thought a lot about Clara too, and I have, although I haven't worked with Clara very long, I know that when I did complete the evaluation, I know that she's gone over and above her, probably what anybody else needed to have done or could have done with her credentials. So I took her credentials into term too, even though I hadn't worked with her a long time, and what she brought to the city of Madeira Beach. And also I talked to Clara about it. And I think it's a very fair thing to give Clara that 4%. I think that's extremely fair. I think that she's probably worth, you know, she probably could, I don't know, do better or whatever, but I think that she's happy with it. I think that Clara will move forward with the city and stay with us for a long time. I think the 4% at the new fiscal year is warranted. And I did say, and I thought to myself, I really would like the board to consider, after we get through with this budget thing, something in line with a bonus for Clara for the period of time from actually, I guess, from this last year. But I don't think to go forward on an I think I'd rather think about it on a bonus standpoint than putting it onto, tacking it onto the pay structure at this time. So that's my thinking. I think she's been a great employee, and I hope she stays around a long time.
Yeah, Clara has done a great job. Before she came, we were without a city clerk for about 6 months. And of course, there's a lot of backup work that she had to do. And she did a great job. She's here on the weekend. She's here at night, sometimes to midnight, if not longer. She has the credentials. She is really dedicated to her job and what she does. She's very fair about a lot of things. And even though this is just a 6 months evaluation, I feel that we should at least compensate her with at least $1,500 now, which is the 45% of the $3,000, and have this retroed back to April 24th. And then in November, or excuse me, October, we'll go ahead and give her the 4% increase. I feel she's entitled to every single bit of it. I mean, she puts in a lot of time. She's been through a lot in the last couple months. She's just been very good to have around, and I can't think of anything else, but nice things to say about her. She's done a great job, and I feel like to keep her, we need to compensate her for what she has done, and she has done a hell of a lot, and that's my opinion. $1,500 now, retro it back to April 24th, and then in October, give her that 4% increase.
Commissioner, if you're thinking of the $1,500 as a bonus, then why are you calling it back to?
No, I'm not calling it a bonus.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I'm not calling it a bonus. No, it's not a bonus.
You're calling it additional compensation.
Right, to go back to April 24th. And that $1,500 would have been 45% less of the $3,000.
I just know that we brought in Jonathan, we brought in Claire, we brought in Walt to, and I think that we look for the best that we could find out there, and, what I hear is Jonathan keeps saying, we got to take care of the employees that are going to leave, we're going to take, but we also have to take care of the staff or they're going to move on. So, in some ways I agree with what Nancy is saying. Do we do the $1,500? I'm not sure of. Do we go, do we increase it by a different percentage? I'm going to need to think on this some more because we can't vote on it now anyway. We'll have to do that at the next regular BOC meeting. But, there's got to be something in there, I think, for her. And I agree with you a lot, Nancy. I think she has gone way above and beyond, and I think she's got a long way, a lot more to tackle in that office in the future, I think there's still a lot of things that need to be done in there, and there's only so many hours in the days and days in the week, et cetera, et cetera. And, I think she's trying to move forward on this. So, I agree. I think, we go back and increase her salary to somewhat. Is it $1,500? I'm not sure of. Let me think some more on that. And then, we look at the raise come October with the other employees. I think we're in a situation, damned if we do and damned if we don't on this, so. I think I agree with Commissioner Hodges on this one.
I did look at the chart that was completed for us with regards to, I guess it was and I don't, like I say, I know that it doesn't tell the whole picture, but I'm basing some of my thoughts on it. The fiscal year 2019 proposed local salary increases. And when I looked at the city clerk, and like I say, I know that this is not valid in all cases, but I do see where I feel that our city clerk is being, for right now, is in a good range, okay? When you compare it to Indian Shores and compare it to St. Pete Beach. I don't know what kind of a staff those other people have, but Clara is way into the mid-range, okay, above the mid-range on that. And I think that's why I'm thinking that my thoughts are to commit to that 4% increase in October and to consider not anything before that time other than another discussion on what we might feel Clara would like to have as a additional little savings or piggy bank for all of the past efforts, or because I think coming on, I think that we, as you said, Commissioner Dothert, I think that there certainly still are more challenges that are going to face the city clerk, but I'm comfortable with my 4% in October and considering.
Okay, but we just need to put it on the next BOC.
Right,
and we'll vote
right.
on what we need to
And
do.
and I'm sorry, what did the mayor, I didn't hear what her comments were on that, so.
She said she thought she was doing a good job and all, and she was only going for the 4% in October.
Okay, thank you, I was just curious, okay. Okay, so do we have any more discussion on
If we're
that?
going to meet on next Wednesday, what I recommend is no more additional paperwork to add to this next Wednesday. Just bring what we have at this
Yeah.
point.
We get so confused.
Yeah, no, that's certainly our desires, to provide you that information.
So we can finally get through, complete something.
Yeah, it's ever, it's ever evolving and ever changing and those types of things. But we've nailed down where we feel comfortable as far as the CIP. Now it's just getting direction from the board, what projects that they'd like to see modified, changed, eliminated, added, those kind of things. And then from that, we can basically put together a balanced budget and get you a hard document to go through that to include the budget narratives and all the other ancillary components that we discussed.
So we are going to leave the, all of the item D for the workshop that we've scheduled for next Wednesday at 1 o'clock, right?
Right.
Okay, so are we going to adjourn the meeting now? Yep. Okay. With no further business being to be discussed, we'll adjourn the meeting at 4:51.
Thank you. You didn't hit the gavel.
That does look like